I want to know what body wash you use, Zach, because I feel like you're like an Axe guy.
No, I don't use
Not at
any
all.
store-bought brand.
I
What do
kind
you
of
think
don't
it is?
believe that. What I
You
think it is?
don't buy soap at all?
No,
He doesn't.
no, I do buy soap, just not from like a Walmart or like a Fred Meyer or something.
Do you order it in from like Salt Lake or something?
No, not from the Mormon Hub either.
No. Oh, okay. Just wondering.
It's so
I don't know.
exfoliating with the salts.
I don't know. What do you use?
I use what's called a Yap wash, YAWP, and it's by a company called Beast.
I don't even know what that is. This is not a paid advertisement either.
It's not.
Also, where are you guys at right now?
So I'm in California.
Okay.
And I'm in New York
I remember you
State.
saying that. Sorry, say it again, Zach.
I'm in New York State.
New York State. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So how did you guys get in touch with each other? How did y'all get to know each other? Through the Air Force?
So it's funny you say that. Zach and I met in a East African country called Kenya. And it's East African. I got you, Zach. Yep. And we met, and I was, I guess, technically Zach's boss.
You were.
And we were just basically out there doing stuff, with other people doing stuff. Yeah. And we've been friends ever since. Actually, it's more been like a father-son relationship.
Yeah. I'm his daddy.
Yeah,
not true. Don't believe him. Yeah, but yeah, that's how we met, and we've been friends ever since, for sure.
That's cool. So, being in New York State, how close are you to New York City?
4 hours. I'm in what would be considered. So, some New Yorkers consider anything above New York City as upstate, but I would be considered like central New York.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah,
I'm
New York's
just
really
outside
pretty.
Syracuse. Yeah.
New York is really good. Where are you at, Luke?
I'm in San Antonio, Texas. So.
Oh, okay. We're familiar.
Oh, you've been. Well, yeah. There's an Air Force base here, right?
Yeah, that is the Air Force base.
It's where everybody goes to go to basic training in the Air Force. We only have one base we all go to.
No way! I didn't know it was here.
Lackland Air Force Base.
If you want to just see the airmen forever, as far as I can see, go to the Riverwalk on like a Friday.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yes.
Because they
it'll
base
be
like
nothing
Liberty.
but noobs. Yeah, nothing but noobs and blues, right? With their families.
With no ribbons.
I do see that all the time. I used to work at the SeaWorld here in San Antonio.
Yeah.
And you would see blues all the time there. Like people who I would be like, they must have just gotten out of boot camp, because they would all come at the same time.
That day,
yes,
they actually.
Yes.
Oh, really? Yeah.
It's a weekly thing. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So. But yeah. So I'm in San Antonio, and then part of the year I'm in North Carolina. That's where my family's at.
Okay.
So my wife and I are here. She's in dental school, so that's where we live now.
Nice.
So yeah. But
cool. Yeah. We should jump right in, man. I mean, we're trying something new with just like the organic open, but this is Luke Caverns, Luke Reagan officially, right? But Luke Caverns, you can find him on social media. Do I got that right?
Yeah. So Caverns is a second middle name. So Luke Aaron Caverns Reagan. And
there it is.
Reagan just wouldn't have worked because of the president. So, anytime, like if I were to try to use that name, I would be constantly overshadowed.
Probably. That's
true. Yeah. So
Luke Caverns, everybody.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you guys for having me on.
Absolutely. Dude, so this episode has been probably, what would you say, Zach, at least 4 months in the making, because we have wanted to have somebody on to go over this topic. And in fact, and I'm just going to say it, I'm going to blow our spot up right now, Zach. We did a poll a long time ago, and it was like, hey, week 3. What do you guys want to hear us talk about? And we gave all these options, and one of them was ancient Civ, and that was the winner. And we've not done it since. So I just never did another poll because I was like, how can I do another one without having actually done the result of the first one? So this is it, guys. If you've listened to us that long and you remember that poll and you voted, this is us holding up our end of the bargain, and we'll try not to wait so long next time.
Shout out to Witham, who's probably at the edge of his seat waiting to hear this. He's a friend of mine, and he's asked about it. So
exactly.
Yeah, and thank you guys for hounding me down, getting me down to it. I love doing podcasts, but it's tough because like I just have so much crap going on right now. But I love like sitting down and getting on people's podcasts and just talking about whatever. So
dude, I'm just glad you're here, man, because I have been an Indiana Jones fan my whole life, and you are like the closest. You know, I've never met Harrison Ford, right? But I feel like having you here is kind of checking a bucket list box for me right now.
Yeah. Well, thank you, man. I wanted to make when I first started making videos, I kind of had this was probably, I don't know, maybe just over 3 years ago now is when I first realized I wanted to make videos about ancient history. Always loved it. I've loved ancient history since I was probably like 6 or 7. It was whenever Troy came out, Brad Pitt's Troy.
Great
and
movie.
That just got me infatuated with ancient history. And and so probably just over about 3 years ago, when I realized I wanted to get into making videos about ancient history, I was looking for people to, I don't know, you look for like rabbit holes to go down on YouTube, but there wasn't a guy like I imagined, why is there not a guy who has his YouTube channel based around if Indiana Jones were to have a YouTube channel, if Nathan Drake or somebody like that were to have a YouTube channel,
Genius.
And I was looking for that, and I never found it. And I just realized like I was probably the one I was waiting on. And so I just took my shot and went for it. And it took, started uploading videos in October of 2021. And so it's been 2 years now. So yeah, it's moved along fast. This year it started really moving fast. I went like a whole year with not really a lot of growth, and then all of 2022 with not a whole lot of growth, and then 2023 things really popped off.
I've heard quite a few other creators say stuff like that because this podcast is less than a year old. And I think we've been pretty fortunate to be able to put out an episode a week. And both Zach and I actually, we're pretty busy lives, just being active duty and whatnot. But I have always loved history as well. My grandfather bought me a book when I was a kid on King Tut's mummy, and then another one just on Egypt. Yeah. And so Egypt was, I always say, like my first love with history, which I think is true for a lot of people. But ever since then, my parents had the Indiana Jones VHSs. Used to go to town on those. That and just the fact that I could not stop reading everything that I get my hands on with history. And so I just have a very healthy love. My first, the thing I wanted to do when I first went to college was become a history teacher. That didn't work out. Uncle Sam decided to get me. But I love history, and I'm really glad to have you on, man. So what is your like specialty, your background?
Well, okay, so I'm an anthropologist. I went to school, got a degree in anthropology. But my specialty, I mean, I don't really have a defined specialty. Really, it's just like early civilization, I guess is the way to put it. I study how people would have lived. So an anthropologist is basically the study of people. And so I could study modern day people, or I could study ancient people, and I much prefer ancient people because I kind of romanticize it and be a little delusional about it. You get lost in the lore of it all.
Absolutely.
I would never study modern day people. I think it would make me sick. So I study early civilization. So Mesoamerica, which would be it would be Mexico all the way down to like northern Honduras. I study civilization in there because there's a lot of unanswered questions. Been seriously studying South American history as well, like Andean culture. There's a lot of really interesting stuff going on down there. A lot of things that don't quite add up. Spent a whole lot of time studying ancient Egypt. Golly, just a ridiculous amount of time studying Egypt. I never really got into Greece and Rome. I don't know. It seems so well defined. Like I think we almost know everything about Greece and Rome. Egypt, there's still a lot of mystery, and in Central and South America, there's still a lot of mystery. So that's kind of, the places where there's a lot of unanswered questions is what I dive into. At least now,
Yeah.
I would say I'm in education entertainment. That'd be my specialty, you know.
Right. Got you. Yeah, I
Yeah.
totally agree with that. Everybody knows about Rome and Greece, and but I'm sure somebody you're aware of, Graham Hancock, is one of the people that I kind of I lean towards and read a lot of his stuff. But he always talks about the Amazon being this untapped resource for research. And then correct me if I'm wrong, right? Pizarro, right, in the 16th century, went on an expedition up the Amazon there and reported on a bunch of civilizations that lined the river. And then when they went back, what was like 100 plus years later, there was nothing there.
Yeah.
Right. And so I feel like the jungle has done a really good job of hiding all of that. And then a couple years back, I remember there was this kid who, using I want to say just like star maps, was able to find a bunch of different little what do you want to call them, like towns inside the Amazon. And no one had ever done that. And I know they use LiDAR and all this stuff to try and like map out the Amazon, but that has always been a super big interest of mine too. I feel like there's so much there that we have no idea about.
Yeah, the Amazon's pretty amazing. So I don't know what the square mileage is of the uncharted rainforest, but I know that
I'll figure it out.
I know that the Peten is golly, it's several thousand. So the Peten, that's the jungle that's in northern Guatemala, and we know that there are lost Maya cities in there. And if you'll tell us, Zach, real quick, what the square mileage is of the Amazon. But so I want to say the Peten is like, it's either 900 square miles or 9,000 square miles. It's something like that, and it's almost entirely, it's like 99% uncharted, and we found maybe just less than 10 cities in that area. But if I were to show you that on Google Earth, and then I were to zoom out to the Amazon, the Peten is a speck. It's compared to the Amazon. And so the Peten is more of my specialty. Like, that's where I would, if I were to go try to find a lost city, I would go to the Peten rather than the Amazon, because the likelihood is you will find one in the Peten. Anyway, there's definitely
6.9 million square kilometers.
Okay.
2.72 million square miles.
Gotcha. Okay. So the Peten is 9,000. Okay, and it's 9,000 square miles, and we have surveyed approximately 1% of the entire thing. So that's 9,000 compared to what, 3 million? Is that what you said?
2.7. Yeah,
basically.
So almost 3 million. I mean, it's
that's wild.
It's impossible. If you didn't know where it was already, you're not going to find it. And so you have all these stories of guys like Percy Fawcett trekking off into the jungle. And have you guys seen The Lost City of Z, the movie?
No,
never. Or read the book? I have the book here somewhere with me. Yeah, so it's it's Colonel Percy Fawcett. He's an English soldier, and I don't remember the backstory of what exactly his dad did, but his dad was kind of a failure that that brought some shame to his family. And in England at this time, late 1800s, early 1900s, that's a very important thing. You don't want to bring shame upon your family. You want to keep your family name alive. People don't really care about that today. So his dad did something to shame his family, and Percy Fawcett was kind of looked down upon by these English aristocrats who, were part of the Royal, I think it's the Royal Geographic Society, like the Explorers Club. This is the very beginning of the Explorers Club, if you guys have heard of that. And so these guys, they chart, they're explorers that are charting the whole world, and they basically want to they definitely have like a Eurocentric bias at the time. Like, they think Europe is the end all be all of all civilization. So they send Percy Fawcett, who's like the most expendable colonel or whatever, on a mission into the Amazon to map the Amazon River. I believe its border between Brazil and Bolivia. And so while he's down there, he goes on like a 2-year expedition to do this. And they tell him, if you do this, you'll reclaim your family name. Your family will be in good standing. You'll make, we'll promote you, blah, blah, blah. But they really think he's going to die. And they think
Just
it's
set him up
likely
for
he's still
failure.
there.
Just go.
Yeah.
Just go.
Yeah, that's why they're sending him down, because he's expendable.
Mhm.
Well, he ends up going down, and he like falls in love with the local indigenous people and how humble they are, and he starts hearing tales of these cities that are like littered with gold, these giant cities full of millions of people, and these are legends that had been around, right? It's from the days of Oriana and Pizarro,
Mhm.
and so he hears about these stories as well, and so by the time he comes back, when he finishes the mapping project, he's now infatuated with the idea of there being a city out there. And so I want to say that's 1908 when he gets back from his 2-year expedition, so 06 to 08. Comes back, goes back maybe the next year or a couple years later, and he's in and out of the Amazon until 1925, and he goes missing. And so he was looking for this place called the Lost City of Z, or he called it Z. I think he gets that from like a local indigenous tribe, and there's also it gets mixed up because people think he was looking for El Dorado, the city of gold, but he was actually looking for something else. He was on the opposite side of South America. So what we take from that is we have these stories of El Dorado in Colombia. That's the northwest side of the Amazon. On the southeast side, you have the Mato Grosso, where Percy Fawcett went missing. And so there and everywhere in between, people hear stories of lost cities full of gold that gets confused for El Dorado. As an anthropologist, I dive into the history of the area, and I'm starting to realize it wasn't just one El Dorado. It was an entire continent full of different El Dorados, full of these goldsmithing cultures and wealth that's been eaten up by the jungle. So this is something I really haven't dived into on my pages or YouTube at all, just because I try to be super well read before I ever start talking about it. But dude, there is a whole world of civilization. I mean, all of Inca, Tiwanaku, if you've heard of that, all of Inca religion, Tiwanaku, Moche, Chavin, like all these cultures that are in the Andes, all of their religion comes from somewhere in the Amazon that's never been found. There's a civilization or multiple civilizations that emerged from the Amazon, and some of them went west onto the Andean, like in the Andean mountains and the Peruvian coastline. And all of that culture, all the origins of that civilization are somewhere in the Amazon that's never been found. So that's like a whole rabbit hole to go down. Yeah. And we know that because you guys should look into something called the staff god. So so the staff god is also known as the Fang deity, also known as Viracocha. If you guys have heard of Viracocha.
I've heard Viracocha before. Okay.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of like the Westerner. That's kind of what Westerners have known it as. But we know that the cultures that brought the staff god to Andean civilization. So for anybody listening, so you have the Amazon. Just west of the Amazon, you have the Andean highlands, the Andean mountains, and then just west of that, you have like the Peruvian coast and the deserts and everything like that. Then you have the ocean. It's just a sliver called the Andes. And there's not as much jungle there. It's not quite as dense. Sometimes it could be more arid, a lot more dry. And there were civilizations that arose in that area, creating monuments out of stone that can still be seen today. I mean, like giant megalithic stones like we see at Machu Picchu, Sacsayhuaman, Ollantaytambo, Cusco, Lima, on and on and on. Even the Valley of Pyramids. Oh, dude, y'all gotta look up the Valley of Pyramids. There's a place.
Get on it, Zach.
Yeah, so the Valley of Pyramids in Peru, if I were to show you a photo of it and not tell you what it was, you would think it was Egypt. I swear. Wow. It looks literally exactly like Egypt, and most people don't know about it. So, and for anybody looking, look up Valley of the Pyramids, Peru, and you'll think it's Egypt. It looks exactly.
Zach should be able to pull up and share his screen.
Yeah,
that'd be find a good picture.
So
I can. I'll pull it up.
So in all of these cultures, we get a representation of a god that has fangs, that's holding stalks of maize, which is just corn, standing kind of stoically in every single instance. Yeah, look, if somebody were to show you this, you would think it might be Egypt.
Well, if you look, you've got like This almost looks like a wall. There's like a pyramid here. There's a pyramid here. Looks like a pyramid here that like toppled.
Yeah.
They definitely look like they lost their tops, but
well, so they weren't they were pyramids, but they're more like ziggurats. Have you ever seen a ziggurat in the Middle East? That looks like it's like a trapezoidal structure that has a ramp that goes up to the middle of it. It's what's weird is the same way that Mesopotamian cultures built ziggurats, these are exactly the same thing. Literally exactly the same thing. And they have tombs at the top. It's amazing. I mean, how much does that look like Egypt? And those things are massive. But they made them out of a certain type of stone that didn't that weathered easily over time. So the surrounding, like the outer exteriors of it, haven't held up. But on the inside, there are tombs and structures on the inside that
they
have
almost
held
look
up
like
over time.
Kind of like the smaller pyramids from Egypt.
Yeah, they kind of do,
because these kind of like have steps to them. And then when you look at where'd that other picture go?
Also, like one is like Hotep, I think, is the small like Egyptian one with like. So let me ask you this, because this is a question many people have pondered over time. What is up with the similarities between these cultures, Mesopotamian cultures, Egyptian cultures, and then all of these cultures in South America and Central America with the similarities in their construction, right? It seems to me that's pretty strange. I know that somebody, I think Thor Heyerdahl, right, tried to build a boat and take it across the Atlantic at one point to see if it could be done. But I mean, what do you think? What is anthropology's answer to why the similarities exist?
So that's obviously where the hard line is, right? Like that's right. So it's interesting. There's basically kind of three schools of thought, I think. You have traditional anthropology or archaeology that says no, there's no connection at all.
And they just happened to build pyramids because maybe it was like a sound structure.
Yeah, sound structure, or it's like how, like, if you see an anthill on one side of the planet and an anthill on the other, did one of those ant colonies teach the other one, or is it somewhere deep down inside of their being, it's just instinctual to do that? You know what I mean? It's something that they're going to figure out no matter what. So it's kind of that's kind of, I wrestle with that as well. Now, it's if you look at archaeological evidence that is accepted, there's good evidence that in some places, I'm not talking about like specifically the Moche who are accredited to building the Valley of Pyramids, and the ancient. So the Moche are credited to building the Valley of Pyramids between 500 AD and 1000 AD. So 1500 to 1000 years ago. Whereas the Egyptians, like, let's talk about the Great Pyramids, according to traditional Egyptology, that is 2500 BC. Okay, so that's a 3,000 and a half year difference in time and distance in time, if you're, at least that much. So even if they're right about the dates, there's obviously there's not going to be a connection there between 3,000 years. There's not even a connection between the Egyptians in 2500 BC and the Egyptians 3,000 years later. There's no connection between them at all. They don't. Egyptians in year zero know nothing about the Egyptians in 2500 BC. Right. So we know that through time they're not connected. They would have had to exist around the same time. So, and then if you think that the pyramids were built in pre-cataclysm, pre-end of the Younger Dryas period, then there's definitely not going to be a connection, because those Moche pyramids are definitely not that old. They just know that. They just know that because they actually have found bodies inside them, inside the core, and then the pyramids were built higher, and you can obviously carbon date the body, and you can do it to like a pretty good degree of accuracy. So we know about the time that those pyramids were built. So as far as the connection, it's, I don't know if I should say almost proven, but there's a lot of compelling evidence that it was definitely possible for people to get from the old world to the new world. I mean, it did happen later on in 1492. And definitely the Vikings made their way into Canada and like Newfoundland. But if we're talking about the traditional ancient world Mediterranean civilization meeting up with either Central or South America or Mesoamerica, yes, there's a really interesting story or a really interesting case to be made. And Graham Hancock touches on it just briefly in one of his books, but I'm going to make a video like really going into this topic. So there's an Olmec site called La Venta. This is in the Mexico state of Tabasco. And I was there just in January of this year. And there's a monument called Monument 13. And it depicts a man who's a tall, skinny man with like a well-defined mustache and a pointy beard. He's wearing a turban and he's got pointed shoes and he's carrying this like flag that he's got in front of him. And there is a logogram that's down to the right next to him, it's like an early form of Mesoamerican writing. And it has a foot, and then on the right of him, there's also other logograms that are deciphered by, I guess, linguistic anthropologists that study Mesoamerica. They just think it means the traveler. This is representing a person who's traveling. So what's really interesting is the Olmecs are all depicted as being completely bald. If they grew facial hair, which most ancient Americans were notorious for not being able to grow facial hair whatsoever. It really wasn't in their genetics. It's thought that a lot of them come from it's all thought that they come from Asia. That they migrated over from Asia. Well, and then that some sailed from Indonesia on rafts and floated into Central and South America. And so, you look at Asian people, they're not growing facial hair like like people in the West are, and or like Europeans are. So it's just not in their genetics really to grow facial hair. There's also no depictions anywhere of any Mesoamericans or any ancient people in the Americas anywhere wearing turbans. So you have a giant beard and a turban that shows up out of nowhere, and the Olmec hieroglyphs say the traveler. Well, that's not actually all. There's another depiction of this same person, the traveler, meeting there's a stela. I think it's like stela 40 something. And so they're meeting two people, and you see this person who's clearly not Olmec, and you see this person that's clearly Olmec talking to each other. That's at La Venta as well. And then there's like a shark god thing that's above them. And what's really interesting about that is Olmecs, we don't have any evidence that they were seafaring. Even though they were on the Gulf Coast, we don't have any evidence that they were building boats. They didn't depict them building boats. So we don't really know that they would even know what a shark was. Maybe from the coast you would see a shark. Maybe. But it's just weird that it's also depicted with this person who doesn't look Olmec that would have had to travel through the ocean to get there, right?
The traveler. And
then you also have from San Lorenzo, you have a clay face that was it was clay or it was stucco, and it's a 3D rendering. It's like one of the original. It's like one of the oldest. Oh well, I guess what I'm trying to say is in the way that ancient Greece, you know how they had their stone or marble statues that have like the full on features that are all life size or they're bigger than life size, but they're very realistic. This is exactly the same thing, made out of stucco clay. And it's a man with a really like pointy chin, a little pointy beard, a little pointy goatee, also wearing a turban. He looks literally nothing at all like anybody that ever lived in Mesoamerica. And dude, I'm telling you, there's nobody that's actually publicly talking about this. Like, it's just
that's wild. Zach, you should see if you could find that statue thing.
Yeah, look the statue called again.
It's San Lorenzo. So SAN, and then I'm gonna spell Lorenzo wrong, but LARENZO, San Lorenzo clay head. And once you see it, you'll know what it is. It's gonna be like a black and white photo.
So you got to think, if you are an ancient culture and then somebody comes across, let's just assume, on a boat and they look like that and they're totally different than you, that's exactly the kind of thing you are going to want to document and make make something out of it, right? Depict them in a figurine or a mural or whatever, right? Yep. So to me, that just says like a momentous occasion happened in our culture, and we're documenting that this happened. That's the way I interpret that.
That's the way I interpret it, and I'll tell you that's the way that there are some archaeologists out there. Although they never really publicly come out much about it, they're not ever really going to make any kind of significance of this because they don't want to be seen as fringe, this, that, and the other. Let's see if
that's unfortunate.
So this one?
No, so that's just a regular Olmec head. So clay head. Oh gosh, man, this is a tough thing to find.
Yeah, people aren't talking about it, so
maybe look up stucco, Stucco.
And you said, Luke, that
I'll tell
this
you
is
what,
because
on my recent YouTube video, it's on there. If you go to the chapter that says fringe, it's in my recent YouTube video, the one called Lost Knowledge of the Olmecs. If you go towards the end of the video, I don't know if you can hear my dog barking.
we'll get it. No worries.
So towards the end of my video, oh my gosh. So towards the end of the video, if you click on the chapters where it says fringe theories, it kind of slide through it. I will show a depiction of a clay head somewhere in there. Let's see if I can find it.
I found it.
Okay.
It's this one right here. Yep, look at that. He's got a big old pointy beard.
Whoa.
Little mustache. Yeah. And yeah, it's like a turban.
Yeah, how bizarre is that? That's completely
extremely bizarre.
That's not like anything seen in the ancient Mesoamerica, ancient Americas, anywhere. And that is 100% real. And a lot of times there's stuff like this that that comes up. Like, have y'all ever heard of the real crystal skulls?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so the real crystal skulls are thought to be black market fakes, and one of the most famous one, the Mitchell Hitchens skull or something like that, appeared in Belize, and those are thought to be black market fakes. This one is not thought to be a black market fake. All archaeologists who have anything to do with this acknowledge that it's real. So, anyways, these depictions of this person called the Traveler, through relative dating of where they're found and what's buried around it, they estimate that it existed between 1000 and 900 BC. Okay, at exactly the same time as this, coming straight out of the gates of Gibraltar in the Mediterranean Sea, you have the Phoenicians, who are launching the first ancient expedition sailing out of the gates of Hercules, which is the Strait of Gibraltar, the western exit of the Mediterranean Sea, down and around Africa, all the way back to the Mediterranean Sea. And it's documented that there were Phoenician vessels that went missing, leaving, like going around. They didn't just send one vessel, they sent multiple expeditions.
Sure.
So the Phoenicians documented that there were expeditions that went missing. There were also expeditions that came back and said that they didn't sail around Africa. They went too far west and they found a continent too far west.
Whoa.
And nobody talks about this at all. But I believe there's some discrepancies in the way it's described. And if I try to go into detail on it, I'm going to butcher it.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, the Phoenicians said that they found something out there. They found an island or a continent or something, and then they were able to sail back. But none of this stuff is ever like fully entertained. So this would have been around 900 BC. So I mean, yeah, you're looking at a much 2,000 year earlier connection between the ancient world and the new world than is currently thought. We only recognize 1492 as being the date that the worlds collided, but it could have been as far back as 9,000 BC or 900 BC. I'm sorry.
This is another one here. It's from the same area. He's got a beard, little thing on his head. Looks like he's carrying an animal.
Looks like a So that would be the Olmecs depicted a lot of times. They depicted jaguars in a lot of their art. And what's interesting is a lot of Olmec art seems to resemble this god that is seen in South America, which is the fanged deity. It's like a human with jaguar fangs coming out of his mouth. And we assume that's what it is because we know it comes from the Amazon. Jaguars there, right? So yeah, the Amazon, and then you kind of go up into southern Mexico where the Olmecs are, and right at the same time that this ancient Amazonian culture is emerging from the Amazon and coming into the Andean highlands, there's a place called Chavin de Hontar, which is an ancient city, and that's where they start. That's like the first place that we 100% know for a fact because we have relics. You could look up like what's it called? The Ramundi stone. If you look up the Ramundi stone, it's a giant stela that on the bottom of it depicts this fanged deity. And this is going to date back to between 500 and 900 BC at the exact same time as the Olmecs. And the Olmecs also depicted, they kind of worship themselves. Like they didn't have a god. In some ways they worship themselves, but it seems like the people that they worship could become a jaguar in the same way that this fanged deity was a jaguar. So you're looking at like you're looking at a religion, a set of beliefs, like a culture or an ancient culture that comes from the Amazon and spreads across the outer edges of the Amazon all the way up into Central America into the time of the Olmecs. So it's really amazing. There's just so many rabbit holes I could go down. That's crazy.
Yeah,
were you able to find the Ramundi stone?
How do you spell that?
Probably Ramundi. Ramundi. I'm probably spelling that wrong, but that should get you there.
So let me ask you this. You talked about this is the first time I've not heard of it, or I've heard of a city that was made of gold that wasn't El Dorado, right? Mm-hmm. So if the thought process is that there were other El Dorados, like you were saying, what's the purpose of building a city of gold? Gold isn't even that durable. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And you have these stories of like the Aztec offering up all this gold to Cortez, they clearly had it in abundance. Is that the purpose? Like you have this in abundance. It didn't have the same value to them that it did maybe a European person at the time. Like why is that, or is it part of like their religious aspects of their culture?
Well, there's probably some aspects of importance that it does, like in relation to religion. But the thing you got to remember is when the conquistadors show up, they literally erased the history. Like anything that was written, anything that was orally known, they erased all of it. Like archaeology is piecing it back together. Just for instance, there's a big difference between where the Aztecs were and when they existed and when El Dorado would have existed. So El Dorado, El Dorado could have existed. Maybe it did exist at exactly the same time as the Aztecs, but the history of South America is so much more broad and goes back so much further than the Aztecs do. So the Aztecs had only existed for between 150 and 300 years before Cortez showed up, right? Mm-hmm. But anyways, the reason that gold is valuable is because it's just inherently valuable. You can melt it down. You can turn it into anything. You want. You can mold it. You can create things out of it, and then just melt it back down to the way it was before. And it's just all people were able to figure out at some point. Gold is valuable for that malleable reason. It doesn't weather. It just lasts forever. You could drop it at the bottom of the ocean and get it 50,000 years later, and it'd be the same thing. So it's just inherently valuable. Yeah, man. So the reason that I think that they were building things out of gold is probably for that aspect that it's inherently valuable. Also probably just as like a flex of power. You know what I mean? You're able to acquire this gold, so they're gonna kind of show it off. But Yeah, I mean, it was more than just one El Dorado, in my opinion. Like, you have the Moche, you have Chavin culture, you have the Mushik culture, you have there's another one that I always forget the correct pronunciation of it. But then you also have the Inca, you have Tiwanaku. So Tiwanaku, there's some evidence that it was covered in gold. Like the outside walls were gold plated, or on the inside of the walls they were gold plated because of these giant nails that they were hammering into the blocks. Inside of the nail hole, they found remnants of gold inside the nail hole, and they think that there were plates of gold that were being hammered onto the walls of Tiwanaku. But when the Aztecs showed up in Cusco, which was the capital of the Inca world, they had entire temples that the inside of the whole temple was encased in gold, like the way we think of wallpaper. They had gold as their wallpaper. They had like something called like the Garden of the Gods, and or the Garden of God. And when conquistadors went through the garden, one guy, before the Spanish took all of it. Before the Spanish took all of it down and melted all the gold, there was one guy who recorded it, and he said that every animal that was indigenous to the area, that was natural from the area, had been recreated to life size in gold, and the entire garden was covered in like bushes, plants, flowers, trees made out of gold. Each individual leaf was made out of gold. So when you're talking about like these legends that come out of the Amazon or come out of South America, talking about these cities of gold, it's very likely that it's not just one. It was probably dozens and dozens of different cities full of like expert goldsmithers. I mean, even up into Panama, and you start going up through Central America, we find tombs of completely gold-plated kings, gold-plated royalty, gold buried in the ground from civilizations that we never knew existed. We don't even know one thing about them at all. So yeah, South America and up into Central America, completely littered with gold. So El Dorado is most likely not just one place. It's likely a whole continent. And I don't think most people realize that.
So I have something. You're kind of talking about how a lot of their history is just gone because they're like destroyed by the Spaniards and a whole bunch and like other other invaders and stuff. So it just kind of made me think of like modern times. So today, a lot of our history and data information is on the internet, or it's in some digital sense, right? We don't print as much as we used to. We're not doing like carvings of stuff. And I've read that probably in the next like 50 to 100 years, we'll probably all our history will be on the internet, on the cloud, or only accessible from some type of digital sense. But if that all blacks out one day or just disappears, then all the history is gone. Yeah. Is it possible that ancient civilizations maybe had some advancement to where maybe their stuff is also just gone forever because it was in some type of system that can no longer be accessed? Do you think that's possible?
Well, yes, but not in a fancy way though, unfortunately. Yeah. So we know that so I have two explanations. There are two times in history when something like the burning of the Library of Alexandria, I'm sure you guys are familiar with that. There's two times when something like that happened. One is when Rome conquers Alexandria, and they set the boat docks on fire to prevent people from trying to leave Alexandria while they're conquering it. And the fire, so the college, like the library, is built right on the harbor, and the fire spreads up the side and catches the whole library on fire. And I think it burned like half of it to the ground or something like that. But like, you're talking about millions and millions and millions and millions of documents just burned to nothing.
Shame.
However, more devastating than that was when I want to say it's like 1540 something or 1560 something. A guy named Diego de Landa is in Merida, Mexico, and he sends all of his conquistadors around to gather up all of the scribes and priests of the late post-classic Maya. And he gathers all of their, he tells them to gather all of their writing, all of their books, and he throws them into what the chroniclers call pyres. So, a pyre would be like a small mound, right? Multiple pyres of books. So, you think like, what if it's just 3 pyres? Like, it's not that much, right? But really, how many books would I have to take behind me to make up 3 small mounds? I mean, how small is a mound? 6 feet high? How many books can I fit in a 6-foot high mound?
Yeah.
Enough to erase the history of the whole world, I would bet. If it were written in just those books. So, so he burns multiple pyres of these books. But what kind of measurement do we have to know how much that actually is? Well, at the exact same time, or a little bit before that, we know that at the time of first contact between the Spanish and the Aztecs, that the Aztecs were producing 485,000 pages for their books or codices a year. 485,000 a year. Okay. They had only been around for 150 to 300 years. The Maya had been around for over 2,000. And we know that they were writing more than 1,000 years before the Aztecs ever came up on the scene. We know that they were writing. So they burned literally all of it. They just burned all of it. There's like, after the burning of the Library of Alexandria, there's still remnants of what's going on. The people are still there. They don't just destroy the civilization. Egypt still survives for a little bit. And not all the documents are burned, and things are written in other places. There may have been key things that were burned, like blueprints, construction, blah, 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 blah. Okay. History around, Zep Tepi, or where the originators of ancient Egypt, blah, blah, blah. Maybe all that was burned. But I mean, you're talking about every single document of Mesoamerica and the ancient Americas was burned to literally nothing. And at the same time, disease that had never existed in Central, South, and North America was spreading like wildfire.
Yeah.
So what happened was all of the people that are living in the main cities, from the point of contact. So, the Spanish, they show up in the Bahamas, they go into the Caribbean, they go into the Yucatan, and then they go all the way down to the Valley of Mexico at the same time to meet up with Moctezuma in Tenochtitlan, Mexico City. So during all that time, they're spreading disease into North America and into South America, and it ends up being multiple waves. It's not just one disease. It's like a dozen diseases that come like year after year, and it kills about 110 million people. That's like an accurate estimate. There's a lot of,
that's a third of the United States.
Yeah, it kills 110 million people, of which they think that there may have been like 130 to 150 million people in North, Central, and South America. So, the vast majority of people die. But the thing is, the only people left are the nomadic, strange people that don't want anything to do with what's going on in these big cities, that are living out in the boonies. They know nothing of what's going on. It's the people who are living up in the mountains that say, oh yeah, like those Aztecs that are down there, those Calwacan, those Maya people, the Toltecs, Zapotecs, I don't want anything to do with civilization, with cities. It's like the people that live up in the hills today. When all this stuff falls apart, they're going to be the only ones left. And they're not going to be a good resource for someone from the other side of the world to come in and go, what happened here? Like, how did all this fall apart? They're going to go, I don't know. I mean, I didn't have anything to do with it. So the remnants of these major civilizations are gone, because once disease gets in there, they all die. So, everything is gone from ancient Central, South, and North America. So you're looking at very scant, evidence that's left. So that's like my whole, I've become obsessed with this. It's so much more complicated than, I think ancient Egypt is the introduction to people to getting into ancient history. Yeah. But when you get over into the Americas and you kind of learn to digest it a little bit, because it's so much more than you think it's going to be when you first get into it. You realize like the ancient Americas is a rabbit hole so deep that you could never see the bottom at all.
Yeah.
So it's amazing, man. I'm like obsessed with it. I know I went on like a 20-minute tangent
Dude,
just now.
no, that's why we brought you on here. Like,
Yeah.
I want to hear all this stuff. You're right. That is such a void in history, and there's not a lot we know about it, and that really sucks. The thing that's frustrates me is what you were talking about earlier, is how academia seems to kind of stifle people or not even talk about these things that you're referring to. And it's like, first off, like the rest of us who aren't, as educated on this stuff, want to know what you guys know and what you guys don't share, not you, but like proverbially.
Yeah.
And so to know that there's all this really interesting stuff that could challenge the status quo and what we think we know about our origin that exists out there, it's kind of baffling to me. It's like, so you're going to let like a bunch of these brainiac egos get in the way of all of us knowing where we came from. That's just really frustrating.
Yeah, well,
I'm sure it's frustrating to you too.
Yeah, well, it's been like that since the beginning of time. It just I don't know why people are like that.
Yeah.
I mean, even archaeologists that I know that are big time academics, they'll tell you like ego gets in the way. Man, one day I'm gonna start naming names, but I'm too early on in my career to start blasting people. But I mean, like, dude, I could name off names of people that aren't like in my field, but they're the perfect representation of the type of person that like we're all talking about. And it's really interesting because it's like, no matter what, once those people get to a point of prestige in their career, their ego gets attached to what they do. And they like the idea of being the person with all the answers, and that's not a good thing. You don't want to be a scientist who thinks that you know all the answers. That's like the antithesis of what you're supposed to be, right?
I almost said that word.
Yeah, so it's I don't know. It's human nature trying to navigate science, right? You know what I mean?
So I'll say this: like, you're talking about somebody essentially gatekeeping all this information or pretending like they have it all. And don't get yourself in trouble, I guess. You know what I mean? But that's kind of always been my estimation on somebody like Zawi Hawass from the Egyptologist, is that he gatekeeps all this information and he prevents people from going and actually exploring the remnants of the early Egyptian culture and from actually getting real information. I mean, that's kind of what you're talking about, right? With somebody who is just stopping. Yeah. The name of science.
He's a bad guy. He's not a good person. Not even just on a professional level, like on a personal level, he's a bad person. And my personal opinion, this is where I kind of differ from my colleagues, I guess, or people who are in a similar position to me. I personally think that there may be some evidence out there of an ancient lost, kind of Atlantean Diluvian civilization. But I think the evidence is more scant than we mostly think. And I personally don't think that Zahi Hawass himself, there may be some things he knows. I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff that he knows. Though the thing about him, what I think's going on when he's on these dig sites, and he doesn't allow people on them, and he performs digs by himself, I think that guy is in touch with nameless billionaires who live across the planet that want mummies. They want artifacts. And it's more profitable for Zahi Hawass himself to lead a secret dig that he doesn't allow anybody to come see. And then he sells the artifacts on the black market to billionaires around the world who have their own private collections in their basements, where they can have their other billionaire friends, like Jeff Bezos comes over. And they're all talking about all the cool stuff he has. And he's like, you want to see something I've got? Come down in my basement.
Let's take a mummy to space.
Yeah.
Let's take a mummy to space. Dude, what a piece of shit thing to do.
Yeah, no, I guarantee that I mean, rich people buying Egyptian artifacts has been going
Oh
on
yeah.
for like 1,000 years, something crazy like that.
Wasn't it something that the Victorian era was pretty common, was to eat mummies? That's
Yeah.
fucking gross.
Yeah. Mumia, I think that's what they called it. Mumia.
Yeah.
They did it to like cure illnesses or ailments, whatever the hell.
Ailments.
Ailments. Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say. I
We
can't think
got
of
you,
any
dude.
word.
Illnesses.
So yeah. So what's funny about that? I did a whole video on that
Okay.
just over a year ago,
Okay.
and so basically, yeah, some guy came up with this like with the best scam ever, and he started telling people in the Victorian era that, hey, you know, if you pay me, I'll cook up a little bit of this flesh from an ancient royal mummy. This comes from this is a royal mummy, a royal tomb. The soul that lives in this body is going to live forever because of the Egyptian spells that they put on it before they entombed this person. So now we're going to exhume them, and we're going to chop them up, and we're going to, you know, grind it all down and let you eat it, and it'll cure all of your ailments. Well, so they ran. So the guy who was doing this ran out of real estate with his royal mummies. So what he started doing, bro, is he
Royal
started
rats.
going to where the poor people in ancient Egypt were buried.
Oh my God.
And digging them all up, and then selling their body parts all over the, you know, Victorian Europe. And he was selling poor dead people that had died 2,000 years earlier to rich
Solid.
people, and letting these people eat all these mummies. And so, of course, you know, nobody ever got better from that. But
that you know of.
it's a funny story. Yeah, that I know of.
Yeah, they're alive forever. They're hiding.
Yeah.
Have y'all ever heard of so y'all have heard of obviously King Tut's tomb? Have you ever heard of all the people who worked on that? What happened to them?
They're all
like
dead.
Lord Carnarvon and all them, like with the mummy's curse.
Yeah. So they, they're, you know, they open up they open up the tomb, but on the seal of the tomb, you know, there's some kind of spell that Tutankhamun's priest would have put on there that says, you know, should anybody disturb the grave or burial tomb of Tutankhamun, they will be cursed and surely die, something like that. Well, so they open it up. I think Howard Carter, is that the guy who? That's the archaeologist that led it. So they open it up, and sure enough, man, within I think within the next decade, they all 17 people or something like that. Horrific stuff happens to all of them, and they all die. And Howard Carter is the last one. Well, what's interesting is the paint that the Egyptians used on the inside of the tomb had made the air like filled with carcinogens. And so you're walking into a room that paint has just been like mustering in the air with nowhere to go. Now you're breathing
cancer
it in,
air,
and you poison yourself. Basically so. You poison yourself and then you die. So in a way, the mummy's curse was real, which is interesting. I've never discussed this either. This is so cool about like this point in my career or whatever, like where I'm just now talking to people. There's so much that I like, nobody knows that opinions that I have. It makes me excited to talk about, because I'm like, there's so much.
We want to hear them.
Just keep
want to hear them.
There's so much stuff where I'm like, I haven't ever talked about this before.
Yeah.
But dude, I think that, okay, let's put my own religious views to the side. I'm always open about it. I'm Greek Orthodox Christian. So I believe like if I'm going to be a Christian, I need to follow the letters of Paul, right? And what he wrote to the Greek churches. That's okay. So I'm Greek Orthodox. Putting that aside, dude, I definitely think that there's something spiritual about the world that we live in. And when these Egyptians, they're all, in my opinion, look at ancient cultures and look what they do in the name of their gods. Look at the things that they achieve and the genius that's put towards achieving things like a lot of times the Maya would build these giant temples. This is on the other side of the world. But the Maya would build these giant temples, and then they would say, oh, the gods did it. They wouldn't even take credit for it, right? There's a lot of interesting stuff like that. You see that sometimes in the old world, although, you know, you do see vain pharaohs who put their names all over everything, right?
Is that like the
So
ultimate display of humility or something, or like what?
Well, it's like by the
yeah,
grace
it's
of
the
God,
ultimate
I was
display of
able to do this or something. Like
Okay.
it's
yeah,
God's bidding
it's
that
a
allowed
display.
me to accomplish this.
Yeah, it's a display of humility. The Maya, which one reason I like them a lot is they're very self-sacrificial, literally.
Mm-hmm.
Like, whereas the Aztecs were like, oh dude, I'm not sacrificing myself, we're gonna go capture that guy.
Yeah.
And they're like since
His
you're
heart.
since you're some crummy homeless guy living on the streets of Tenochtitlan, you're worth about 10, or 10 of you are worth one good guy. So rather than sacrificing the good guy because we need him, because the Aztec Empire isn't doing that well, we're going to sacrifice 10 homeless people to make up for it.
Modern
So the
problems
Maya,
require modern solutions.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
sure.
So the Maya sacrificed their own people, and they sacrificed the best. So if you were the
Oh
prettiest,
wow.
kindest girl of the city, your ass was getting sacrificed.
Dang.
If you
For
were
the
playing
greater
the Maya,
good.
if you were a great Maya ball player, people only got to watch that for about one game, because if you won, you were getting sacrificed. So
So
And
you
no
everyone
know,
just
Tom
tries
Brady.
to be
No Tom
mediocre.
Brady.
no
Right?
Tom Brady's. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can see that like humility there, though, right? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of ancient cultures accomplished a lot in the name of their gods, and so it's hard to deny. I mean, it's easy to argue the fact, and I think Graham Hancock argues it too, that civilization began because of religion, because of
Mm-hmm.
shamanism, because of people taking natural psychedelics and um, having like spiritual experiences where they were meeting other beings, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of that sparked like science, like
Dude, you
experimenting.
are you
Yeah,
are
keep going.
going right down like my favorite pathway right now. Like,
Oh,
uh,
really?
are you talking? Yes. Are you talking about like stoned ape theory and
Yeah.
like some of the stuff that you ever read, The Immortality Key by
I,
Brian Raskew?
no, I never read the Immortality
Okay, we'll
Key.
stay away from that one. But like
Yeah.
the stoned ape theory, is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, although I don't, I have so many rabbit holes that I'm
Mm-hmm.
constantly going down. It'll take me. I mean, like seriously, it will take me years to get to a point where I start reading about the Stone Age theory.
Okay.
I just have so much crap I got to get to, but I kind
Mm-hmm.
of know the basics. And yes, I think it's certainly possible that these. I don't think they were apes, but stoned ape theory sounds well. Okay, no, stone ape theory is like, is that what caused like the rapid evolution from like Arthropithecus ramidus, which is like our ancient ape ancestor, to get us all the way to where we are today? Like they start taking hallucinogens and they start evolving really quickly, and their
Yeah, so that
intelligence is
essentially
increasing.
by eating these mushrooms that have these natural capabilities to enhance your brain,
Mhm.
that's where the brain size we have came from, and hence why we think complexly and we're able to do things we do, right? And that's
Mm.
kind of where that's like the root of the stoned ape theory, is that that's where our big brains come from.
Dude,
And I mean, it's a fun explanation to look at. I think I'm not a scientist, and I've never spent the time trying to say, I'm going to prove this. I don't have the skills, right? But
yeah,
to think, I mean, that's I don't know. That's at least a fun thing to play around with. I think about where
yeah.
you're
I
not full blown creationism. You know what I mean?
No, I'm not. I'm
Yeah,
not a full blown creationist at all. I mean, I don't think that the 6 days that it says that God created Earth I don't think it was actually 6 days.
agreed.
Probably more likely 6 segments of time, just like the scientific theory,
Yeah.
thinks. Oh, dude, one day I'll have to come back on and we'll go down the Bible. That is
Yes.
freaking
Let's do
crazy.
it.
The
Dude,
Bible,
love it.
I'll
Dude,
just say,
that, yeah.
for anybody who's a skeptic, the
Mm-hmm.
Bible is wildly accurate when it comes to when it comes to like historical accounts. That
Mm-hmm.
thing is freaking accurate.
And it has a whole bunch of cross references to each other from like past
Yeah.
and present and future when it was written.
Yeah, there's no book quite like the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, that's my bias. But anyways, so continuing.
I want to hear it.
So look at what all these civilizations did in the name of their gods. I
Mm-hmm.
think there's something definitely very real there. Okay? I think that, I don't know. I mean, as an anthropologist, it's weird saying this, but when I read about people taking ayahuasca journeys and they meet this goddess deep in the jungle that is able
Mm-hmm.
to diagnose things going on with their life, and one
Mm-hmm.
person can meet this goddess in one dream, and the goddess can reference the other person that they're with who's also on the trip, and that
Mm-hmm.
person can meet the goddess, and something is happening in their dream at
Yeah.
the exact same time.
Yeah.
Or some people will meet this goddess and the goddess will torture them and then will cure their addiction to meth, or will cure their addiction to alcohol, and they wake up and they have a chemical change while they're on ayahuasca and they're cured of something that's happening to them. I think it would only take things that are very profound like this to actually move
Mm-hmm.
human beings to create the things that they did. Like, okay, so Imhotep, who's the great architect of ancient Egypt, and I'll bring this
Mm-hmm.
back to Tut's tomb in a second.
Okay.
Um, Imhotep, do you guys know who this is?
Mm-hmm.
This is the
I, yeah, I've heard of him, and I know that the Mummy totally ruined who Imhotep really was. The movie,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Well,
Yeah, they made him this bad guy, but
yeah, the Mummy is a great movie, but it's very
it
wrong.
is. Yeah.
Um, so
Sorry, Brendan
yeah,
Fraser.
yeah. So it's very wrong. But so Imhotep is seen as being like the way we look at Aristotle and the
Mm-hmm.
way that we look at Plato and Solon,
Mm-hmm.
and this is Imhotep is the first of these guys. He is the first philosopher, great mathematician, the very first physician of the ancient world. He starts something called the cult of the pharaohs, which leads into it might be likely if all these giant megalithic structures. This is an explanation that I don't think people, golly, I mean, even your normal like orthodox archaeologists and anthropologists, Egyptologists, they don't even really entertain this. But it's kind of a fringe theory, and it's alongside the idea that a lot of these structures are um built by like an earlier culture before Egypt because it can't be
Mm-hmm.
explained, with these giant megalithic blocks. Well, Imhotep started something called the cult of the pharaohs, and this is the precursor to Greek Hermeticism. I mean,
Okay.
all of Greece, all of their ideas of law and philosophy, democracy, blah blah blah. Well, maybe not democracy, but a lot of their beliefs just come from Egypt. Um, but Imhotep started something called the cult of the pharaohs, and it may have been a secret guild that had all of these different understandings of sacred geometry, of the way that the world worked. You can see it encoded into the pyramids. I mean, and
Mm-hmm.
Imhotep wasn't alive for the construction of the Great Pyramids, um, but it may be likely that all of this stuff was figured out during Imhotep's time, or his successors figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's likely, I think, in my opinion, it may be likely that the reason that we don't know the secrets of how they built all their structures is because it was purposely kept a secret. The cult of the
Mm-hmm.
pharaohs knew about all of this construction. And the reason we don't have any blueprints or any representation at all anywhere in ancient Egypt of this kind of megalithic construction is because it was strictly forbidden. It was knowledge that only the pharaohs and the council of the pharaohs was supposed to know, according to Imhotep. So that's kind of a
Mm-hmm.
whole rabbit hole to go down. But I
If I
think
could,
that, yeah, go ahead.
so,
Go ahead.
no, I was just say if I could say like two things real fast. I've often thought about this before. You
Mm-hmm.
tying back into what you said about the whole ayahuasca journey some of these people go on, and there's these shared experiences because my personal belief is there is some other level of consciousness that we're all
Mm-hmm.
able to achieve, and I think that kind of tying into the person we had on a couple of weeks ago, Dr. Donald Hoffman, he talks about how basically our brains have evolved to only show us the things that maximize survivability, right? So that it kind of weeds out things that we don't necessarily need to survive. And that maybe at one point along our evolutionary pathway, we all were able to see and interact with this other level of consciousness. And that as time has gone on, we have moved away from it and now are no longer capable of seeing it. Some
Mm-hmm.
people are more open to it than others, maybe somebody you'd call like a medium or something like that. And
Yeah.
so I've always like, and we're moving away from like real like science now, moving more into like, I don't know what you want to call it. But that all of this ancient knowledge of sacred geometry and stuff like that is is more so a conscious understanding of the world and the way it works, in a way that we're not going to logically explain because we just maybe don't have the capability anymore to do that. I don't know if that's exactly what you're saying, but that's kind of how I view a lot of this, because you're even talking about this Guild of the Pharaohs sounds a lot like Masons,
Mhm.
and just kind of the way that they hide information and stuff like that too. And I'm
Well,
not a Mason.
no, no,
Yeah, go
no,
ahead.
no, no. You're totally right. Like, the precursor to the Masons is the Illuminati. The
Hmm.
precursor to the Illuminati is the Templars. The precursor
Hmm.
to that is Hermeticism. Somewhere along the
Yeah,
way, yeah, because the
yeah.
Templars, what they work for Rome, is that right? Well,
So the Templars were
maybe.
originally like enlisted to guard people going on pilgrimage to the Holy Land, and they're
Okay,
basically
okay.
to
Maybe
protect
not Rome.
them.
Is that in England?
Yeah.
Something like that. I don't know.
So they were an arm of the Catholic Church, which obviously is located
Okay.
in Rome, right? But
Yeah.
that was the initial point of the Templar, was to protect pilgrims on their way to the Holy Land from
Yeah.
basically road thieves. And it's
Yeah.
obviously it's morphed into something totally different, right?
Yeah,
As
for
time went
sure.
on, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then so if they were in Rome, now I'm not that's a whole blank spot for me. Like when
hmm,
you cross over from Greece to Rome, I know a little
hmm,
bit about Rome, and
yeah,
then the fall of ancient Rome, and then how
hmm,
that leads into the Dark Ages. I literally
yeah,
know nothing about the Dark Ages. There's just so
right,
much to know. But
It's
I
pretty
do
dark.
know, yeah, yeah, I do know that I do know that yeah, the Templars, you can draw a vague line back to Hermetics or Hermeticism in
hmm,
Greece, and then the Hermeticism comes from the cult of the pharaohs.
hmm,
So it's I don't know, man. It might be one straight shot from the beginning of civilization all the way until now. It might just be one continuous group, or like the fledgling of a group trying to put it all back together every
hmm,
few hundred to 1,000 years or so.
hmm,
Um, man, I would love to know. Golly,
yeah,
like if I was I'd love to be like a 33rd degree Mason and actually know like what's the most that you guys know. Like
right.
no BS. How much do you actually know? And I'd love to be either mind blown or be like, oh, really? That's it? Like there's
That's
not a
exactly how I
greater
think.
secret, you
Yeah,
know?
dude, like you're just gonna brain matter is gonna come out of my ear, or I'm gonna be like, dude, that was it. What? That's it. Why do you guys
Mhm.
even keep this a secret?
Or it's probably like, you get to 32nd degree Mason and you're like, man, what is actually the next step here? And then
Hmm.
they go, we think you're ready for it. Then they fly you out to like Epstein Island.
Exactly,
No,
dude. I was gonna say, no, no,
I'm
no.
just kidding.
Dude,
You're like,
yeah. At what point do they pull you aside and show you all the plans for all the nefarious crap they're gonna do to the rest of
Mhm.
us? You know what I mean? Is
Yeah,
that the
yeah,
level that they? Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I actually have a question a little bit about what you were talking about with religion and King Tut.
Okay.
So, and correct me if I'm
Oh,
wrong,
dude,
because
I'm sorry, man.
no, no, no. Why
I
are you
want to
sorry?
finish my point. I never got it. I never
Please.
brought it back to King Tut.
That's my fault. You
Hey,
go right, dude. Yeah,
no, 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 you're
jump in.
okay. Remember what you were going to ask me. I just want to say,
I got it.
one more thing. Okay,
Steel trap.
so all of that like 20-minute monologue that I went on was to
it
Mm-hmm.
was
preface
glorious.
the idea
Mm-hmm.
that there's something that cannot be studied right now. There's something that
Mm-hmm.
can't be brought into a lab and put under a microscope, and something that connects all of people through time and
Mm-hmm.
space. And there's some kind of purpose, in my opinion, to all of creation. And I
Yeah.
just think it's funny how things like those Egyptian pharaohs putting the curse on the tomb, how they had no idea that the paint they were using for the inside of the tomb would poison the people who would
Yeah.
break into the tomb. But it still happened, didn't it? You
Yeah.
know what
Hmm.
I mean? They still were right, but they didn't
That's
know the
true.
way that they were going to be right. And it's just funny how life happens like that, and it's
Mm-hmm.
chalked up to like, oh, that's coincidence. But you see it
Right.
happen so many times. It's just, it, it just seems in my mind that there's some kind of divine providence that's in the world. And maybe, I don't know what the inverse of the word divine is, some kind of like evil providence or something. But,
Yeah.
I think that like, and I want to preface, like, I don't have like a clear cut black and white view of like God and anything other than God is like pure evil. I just don't know that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that there's some kind of thing out there that has a sense of irony like that.
Yeah.
I think
That's
it's like a
real.
Well, it's like
That's real.
I think it's like a
I mean,
power
yeah,
of
I like
collective
the
like
woo woo.
belief. I
yeah.
brought
Yeah,
this
yeah.
up before in previous
Mhm.
episode with Brandon. I can't remember if
Yeah.
he guessed or not or what episode it was, but it's probably one of our like question podcast episodes. But it's like the collective power of belief. So like, what if the ancient Egyptians, when they sealed that up and they made that curse, enough of them believed it that it just
Yeah.
came to fruition later? Because
Mhm.
like there's the idea that if like enough people will hope that you feel better, like that goodwill and energy and thoughts can actually
Is the
make you
power of
feel
prayer.
better. Yeah, like
Yeah.
the power of prayer and stuff. Like
Mhm.
there's a lot of instances where just if enough people believe it to be true, it will be true. It can just happen.
Well, are you guys familiar with like the term tulpa? Now
No.
we're staying on the woo-woo side of things right now.
Mhm.
So tulpa is essentially where somebody does, or a group of people does what you're talking about, Zach, where there's so much thought and belief that goes into something that it has its like physical manifestation. And it could be a spirit or like the whole idea behind Slender Man. Obviously, Slender Man itself is not. It was a video game, right? Wasn't it? It was like a Reddit thread, one of those like creepy pastas.
Yep.
And then you start having all these people that talk about seeing it. Now, I don't think Slender Man is real, but that's like the thing that people talk about is that if you throw enough in, belief and thought into something like Slender Man or whatever, that it becomes reality, because there's this whole concept of manifestation. You're creating when you're speaking, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's a tulpa.
Well, I mean, what's interesting is that's spoken about in the Bible. Jesus says if you had the faith that was the size of a mustard seed, you could make trees talk and make mountain. You could make what is it? You can make mountains stand up and walk, or stand up and
Jamie.
move. You can make trees talk. I mean, he's like talking about like if you believe you can do it enough, you could literally do that.
I've heard that before. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting. I have never made the connection between like manifestation and what Jesus is saying, and I might be misconstruing what he's saying. But I don't want to misquote God.
The quote
right.
was,
yeah, for sure.
But if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to the mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you.
Isn't that amazing?
It is.
You know what's crazy is I gotta say, like, this whole ancient history video thing that I'm doing. I spoke about this on the I was on the Concrete podcast a couple weeks ago. Have you guys ever heard of that?
You were on Concrete podcast? Yeah.
It hasn't come out yet. It'll be out in like 3 weeks.
Nice.
So Randall Carlson's episode comes out maybe today or maybe a week from today. We can check see if it's already out. He's got one with Ben from Uncharted X. You guys know who that is?
Yes.
Ben.
I've tried to get him to come on. Yeah, I've tried to get him to come on. He's never written me back. So Ben, if you're listening, please.
It still takes him forever to write me back. But so he had Danny Jones on Concrete podcast, and Randall on, and then Ben on, and then me on, and then he has Chris Dunn after that. Wow. But I was on his podcast and I was talking about, I don't really talk about it, but this whole thing is like a personal journey for me as well. I'm the type of person, I take everything personally. Not like I'm salty, but it's all personal to me,
Right.
And trying to create some kind of life for myself, doing what I love, talking about what I love and sharing it with people, and not being constricted to my day job, which I still have. I mean, I work a day job Monday through Friday. Right. And it's interesting, man. All the things, there's nothing that I imagined that I could possibly do that has proven that it won't happen yet. Almost every single thing that I had imagined in my life, like going down this journey, like that could really happen. It all happened. It's all happened so far.
Manifest destiny.
Like I don't know, meeting Randall Carlson and getting put in this little circle of all these guys. I mean, like all of a sudden now I'm in the conversation, which is freaking crazy. And man, it's just insane. I'll probably never say this publicly again. I had a dream last night that I did ayahuasca with Joe Rogan. I don't know
Dude,
where I don't
you
know where
should
this
do it.
came
You got
from.
to do it.
I don't know where this came from.
I would
But
love to do that.
but I
It
woke
came
up
from
and
your trip on ayahuasca with Joe Rogan. You went back to you and said, "Hey, this is gonna happen." And you went
dude,
forward.
I'm gonna let
What
you know
happened?
if that ever happens. But it's really weird. Like
Mm-hmm.
and it felt so real. And I woke up and I still feel like it. And I'm like, I don't think I'm actually gonna do Joe Rogan or do ayahuasca with Joe Rogan. But I can see myself sitting across the table from him. And I don't know what it is about Joe Rogan. That's like everybody's goal one day. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's
No
you
one's
know,
bigger.
I definitely want to get there before he hangs up the microphone,
Yeah.
And but it's just there's something about this world that we live in that connects our minds to the physical reality, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think almost all ancient text says so.
Yeah.
So I mean this is like the fringe that I never actually get in any of my videos, but I love getting on these topics in podcasts because this is like the place
Yes,
to do it.
it is, man. You could be as fringe as you want. I don't want you to be uncomfortable with like within the academic circles and say something that, might get you looked at sideways. But yeah, dude, that's what this is for. And what you're
Yeah.
talking about, I've said that to myself a few times before, not just with the podcast, but it's like I like to say, it's always a no if you never try or you don't ask,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that's kind of one of the things with manifesting or believing that you're going to or wanting to do something is when you start imagining yourself doing it, you're going to start taking actions that are going to put you in that pathway. And you're going to
Yeah.
start meeting people and talking to people that are in those spaces. And you're going to be intentional about it, even when you don't realize you're being intentional about it. And I think that it is a lot of stuff in life is just about what you think and how you think about it. And
Yeah.
my dad likes to say that there's the only disability is a bad attitude. And I think I remember, that the first time I heard it, and it took a long time to like kind of realize, I think, what that means, but that you can keep yourself in that state where you don't change, and you can keep yourself in that state where you don't become what you imagine yourself to be. And I think that, what you're talking about is where I'd like to see myself some days having something where I can say, this is my life's work and this is what I'm proud of. This is where, obviously I have my children and my wife,
Mm.
those are a part of my life's work as well. But something that you can say that you contributed to the conversation overall in that way is, that would be amazing. And that's cool, dude. I had no idea that you went on that podcast, and because I've listened to Concrete for a while. I know he's like rebranded to like the Danny Jones
Yep.
show or something like that.
Yeah.
And but yeah, no, Randall, I've listened to all of those podcasts he's done with Joe Rogan more than often than not, alongside Graham Hancock, which would also be a dream to talk to. I think he's pretty awesome.
Yeah, he's like golly, who's I don't know, he's like Bruce Wayne. Like you can't not get a hold of him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've never met Graham. I probably will someday.
Hell yeah.
I think the only people I haven't run across that are like popular would probably be Jimmy and Graham. If you guys watched Jimmy Corsetti, if y'all know of him, I never met him.
I was going to ask you about him.
Yeah. Well, feel free.
Well, yeah, that's basically my question. It was like, well, it was going to lead up, but I was going to say, did you know who Jimmy Corsetti was with Bright Insight? Because I follow him on YouTube and stuff. Do you know of him, Brandon?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I started watching. Okay. I started watching Jimmy. Maybe my senior year of high school. So he's been around for a little while now. I think maybe 2015 or 16. So golly, man, that's crazy. What's about 7 years now he's been putting out videos, and it's flown by, bro. And so so I graduated from high school in 2016, which feels like just yesterday. And started watching. Yeah, I did start watching his videos my senior year of high school, the last semester of high school. That's when like I realized that I wasn't going to be a professional athlete, and so after football season of senior year, you start realizing that didn't really take off for me. I'm not getting any calls from
Bama. Nick Saban didn't call you.
Yeah, Nick Saban never called me. So then I start thinking a little more realistically, and so probably about right then is where this it's like the background of my life was always ancient history. My dad and I watched ancient history movies together, my whole life, it's either World War II or ancient history. Those are my two loves.
Yeah.
And
It's every
and
guy.
and
You're a
something
white guy.
about what's weird though is there's something about ancient history and World War II that go together. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's Indiana Jones,
Yeah, dude.
like Indiana Jones is pre World War II, so there's maybe
I mean, there are the Nazis in it, right?
yeah. So
Raiders,
it kind of
Raiders of
feels
the
like
Lost Ark.
maybe it's like culturally there's like a connection there that I don't know how to explain it. Or maybe ancient history through the lens of World War II is very attractive. There's something nice about the way that those two things feel together. I don't know how to explain it. But those are my two loves of history. And I get those from, from spending time with my dad, and I've got like family history, blah, blah, blah. But
I want to hear about it.
yeah. Well, so golly, dude. So on my dad's side, my dad's dad had a ranch in West Texas, in a place called Dryden, Texas, and it was this ranch called Reagan Canyon, and so Reagan Canyon, what 1600s maybe. 1600s, early 1700s, before Texas got its independence from Spain or from Mexico. I guess that would have been, I don't know my Texas history that well. But so, this is, golly, I have so many things going on in my brain right now. Anyway,
like me.
So during the time that Spanish was there, my family was not in West Texas on this ranch. Okay. They were not there yet. So
Understood.
they then moved to an area where in Reagan Canyon, these legions of Spanish military would come down through the canyon, go through the Rio Grande River up into West Texas to New Mexico, Arizona, and San Antonio. So my great-grandfather, or maybe my great-great-grandfather on my dad's side, and his four brothers, you can look it up. It's called like the lost gold of the four Reagan brothers. Wow. And there's a title in there that you can't say because all this stuff is written like over 100 years ago, so they use words that are not appropriate.
Okay.
So anyways, there's a young guy up there. I won't get into like the whole story because this goes on for forever. But there's a young guy who's half African, half Mexican boy who rides up on a donkey from Mexico, and he shows up at the Reagan Ranch in Dryden, Texas. So anyways, they take him in, and while he's out herding their goats, I think he ends up finding a cache that comes from like lost Spanish gold or whatever. And so they end up finding out about these other, it's like caches that were dug into the side of these cliff sides. So bandits would stop the Spanish wagons, kill all the people, take the gold and drag it up into the mountains, and then dig these caches where it's like volcanic rock, so you can dig into it and it all falls down really easily. So they would dig a hole in the mountainside, shove all these big wooden boxes full of gold and guns and swords or whatever into the mountainside, and then hit it with shovels and get all the volcanic rock to fall over it. And they had plans to come get it later. Well, nobody knows how much they stole and how much was actually covered up and how much they didn't come back and get later and they never found. Well, some of it was found. Most of it wasn't. Some of it's on the Texas side of the Rio Grande. Some of it's on the Mexican side of the Rio Grande. Anyways, that sends my family on a 2-generation hunt for the lost Spanish gold of Reagan Canyon. Thus far, none of it has ever been found other than what we know was found, which is just a little bit. Well, anyways, at the same time, these guys in the Reagan side of the family end up making boatloads of money in the oil field. Oil and gold mining and silver mining and, quartz mining, blah, blah, blah. So this then leads down to my dad's dad, who goes off to New Mexico. He's been growing up hearing about the search for ancient Spanish gold his whole life. And he's a wealthy son of like an oil tycoon. And so he takes his money and goes out to New Mexico, where he's like an explorer, treasure hunter type of guy, and he finds the 7 lost Spanish gold mines of New Mexico. It's a legend that's connected to the 7 cities of, like, the 7 lost cities, and it's a similar legend. But he finds the 7 lost Spanish gold mines. Turns out it wasn't 7; it was like 30. And he mined these gold mines for 8 years, made a ton of money. And then a smelter exploded and somebody died, and the mine was shut down in one day. And the partners that were working for my grandfather, they cut and ran on him and cut him out of the business. And my family like fell into immense poverty. And my dad was born in like the fallout of all that wealth. He was accidentally born during all that. So my dad never experienced any of that. Well, but I grew up like hearing that story. Then on my mom's side, my grandpa was a pastor who was big into the history of the Bible. So I got this taste for treasure hunting and exploring, and a huge influence. I never knew my grandpa on my dad's side. I didn't know any of those people. My dad was born like accidentally, and they were a lot older than normal people are. So I didn't know anybody on my dad's family. Never met any of them. But always heard the stories. I have all like the treasure maps. I have it all written down. I've gone out and seen it for myself. Like, it's like a secret location. It's crazy stuff. I wish I could talk about it, but I can't. One day I will, but like there's still more to do, so I can't publicly speak about it.
I was going to ask you what your plans with your family's history were. Like, are you going to try and like bring it up and turn it into, write a book about the story?
I'd love to like buy the plot of land. The reason I won't talk about it is because I don't want to dox the location. Yeah. So that's the main reason. I don't want to dox the location because I know people will go out there and start poking around, and that's my patrimony. You know what I mean? Like I've got to go out there and see it for myself, and maximize my experience there before I start talking about it. But I wish I could talk about it because it's been a year since I found it and went out there to it, and haven't talked about it at all. And it's like a whole thing I could be making videos about and talking about, but I just can't.
When you go public, we'd love to have you on just to like for you to talk about it. That'd be amazing.
Yeah. I don't know. I hope within the next year I can, or like a year from now, I start getting public about it. I just need to. First off, I need a freaking Jeep because it is 20 miles.
You a Jeep.
Yeah, it's Bronco. 20 miles. I should do that. I was thinking of like a lot of these big podcasters. I would never exercise my following like this, but I was thinking like how many people could just say, "Hey, I need a free Jeep," and then they would get it. Absolutely. Somebody would give them the Jeep. Somebody would go. Somebody would hurt themselves financially to give somebody like me a Jeep.
Dude, I would never. If they crowdfunded, what was it, like Super Troopers 2? I feel like somebody will crowdfund you getting a Jeep. Yeah.
I bet there's somebody out there that would buy me one.
Probably.
But I'm not going to exercise.
That's what we're manifesting right now, all of us together.
I'm not going to do it.
If you're listening right now, and you want to give Luke a Bronco, not a Jeep,
Jeep dealers of San Antonio.
Give him a Bronco.
Yeah, man. Somebody, please. There's tons of people that have reached out and offered to ride with me out there. Like, they have a Jeep, they'll drive out there, I'll go with them. But I gotta vet people. You know what I mean?
Dude, people's ulterior motives, man, you'll never know until it's like too late. I'll just do you, man. Protect your heritage like that, and do it for yourself, and for your family. Yeah, dude. If I was in your shoes, I wouldn't take anybody up on a ride out there. Dude, you just show somebody where it's at.
Rent a Jeep off Turo.
Off Turo? I might have to look into that.
Yeah, so Turo's an app kind of like Airbnb where you can rent someone's house and like stay in it for like a night or 2 nights. Turo is the same thing but for cars. So you can just go on there and find a Jeep in that area, and it's cheaper than an actual rental company. Yeah,
they'd have to be okay with me beating up the Jeep because I mean,
it's
you 20 can tell miles. Them, hey, I'm taking this Jeep off road.
Yeah, it's 20 miles as the crow flies into the desert. Okay. It took us 2.5 hours in a Ford F-150 to get there. So it was tough. But anyways, so I grew up hearing these stories, and that, of course, and that along with hearing these stories of lost Spanish gold, which I'm not really into ancient Spanish gold, like in the South, like southwestern United States history, with the Navajo, Mogollon, Apaches, Native Americans in the Southwest, along with lost Spanish cities and Spanish gold. That's a whole thing that people obsess over and they love, but it never really hit me. And it's kind of like creeping in. I'm starting to get more interested in it, but I've always been interested in the ancient, like the ancient world and Central and South America. And unfortunately for me, it's much more expensive to get to those places rather than the West, which is like 4 hours west of me.
Right.
But so, I grew up hearing about the lost Spanish gold exploration that people on my dad's side of the family did. And then I was close and still am close to my mom's father, who is a pastor. But he's always been interested in archaeology and the actual history of the biblical world. Those two things put together, plus my dad and I bonded watching movies about history. The backdrop of my entire life, even when I thought I was going to be like a professional football player, I'm only like 5'10", so I don't know what I was thinking.
Dream
so,
big.
So the backdrop of all that, when I would go to school, I never really thought about ancient history while I was at school, but I would come home and I would think about it. It would bond with everybody in my family talking about history. And then by about the senior year of high school, it started creeping in. I started thinking about other things and, thinking about like, well, how can I use my brain rather than my body for something in my life? And so that slowly creeped in. And then right about the end of college, I was like, I think I'm going to pursue this full time. So then I went back to school, got my degree in anthropology. And yeah, that's kind of like where I'm at now.
Dude.
So yeah, it's just been a crazy journey.
What an incredible history that you have. I don't know my own personal like family history to that level, but it almost seems like you have this history in your family that almost predestines you to kind of be who you are, man. Like, and not to say that like you're stuck on a path or whatever, but like it seems like that's your destiny. Not to get all woo woo or weird on you, but like that is like you have a history to share and to show, and it's something that a lot of people find really interesting. And I think that you're kind of primed for something big with that. I feel like,
well, I'm
gonna get your hopes up a little bit.
Yeah. Well, it's thank you for that. Yeah. That means a lot hearing somebody say that. It's like a lot to hear though,
Yeah.
And I hope that you're right, but yeah, it's certainly crazy. I put like a lot of pressure on myself to live up to something like another thing that's just like that is I had this like strong I don't know, sometimes I feel strange talking about myself, even though I'm on a podcast talking about myself, but I had this strong sense as a kid that I didn't want to do something normal. And when I was a kid, the only thing I ever prayed about, and I don't remember exactly how old I was, but I remember at multiple points in my life, the only thing I ever prayed about was I'd pray and I'd say, God, please make my life like a movie. Because I felt some kind of purpose. And I guess it could be self-fulfilling destiny or self-fulfilling prophecy. But I had that feeling as a kid that I needed to do something. And it's interesting, like, I'll read, now I'm not comparing myself to these guys, I'm never going to kill thousands of people and conquer the whole ancient world. But I read about,
not yet.
Yeah. But I read about guys like Marcus Aurelius and Julius Caesar, which, I mean, granted, these guys were probably a little messed up in their mind, but, like when Julius Caesar desperately wanted to be anything in his life and he had done nothing by 39 years old other than like whore around and sleep with all these women, and he didn't do anything, and he's standing there like he's brought to tears looking at a statue of Alexander the Great. And he's like, I haven't done anything. And this guy was 32 when he died. And then over the next 5 years, he just conquers the whole ancient world, and then he gets stabbed to death and dies. But
abrupt.
Or even Percy Fawcett, like we were talking about, man. He had like a very restless blood. Like he needed to do something in his life, and he longed to get back into the jungle. He needed to do something significant, to be a part of something that was bigger than himself, and leave some kind of lasting impression, even if it meant that he was going to die doing it. And and I don't know.
How you feel?
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It like, I don't know. Like my wife and I talk about it sometimes. Like, she'll tell. I don't know. I'm being like super transparent here, like really transparent.
We're loving it.
I talk to her about it all the time. I was like, I definitely want to mark the biggest thing at the top of my checklist of personal achievements is to find a city that no one's ever seen before, or at least like an extensive set of ruins that no one's ever seen. I have a the reason I clarify that is because I know where one is. I know nobody else has been there, and I want to be the first person to go document it. I know exactly where it is.
I want to go.
And so
rent a Jeep and go.
It's a place called Yashilan. People can look it up. I mean, nobody else is going to go other than me. Other people know it's there, but no one's ever documented it. Nobody's crazy enough to do it for free. So other than me, but my wife and I will talk about it, and it's interesting. Well, I don't know. It's just weird because I don't have like a fear of dying, and I almost think if I were to go out anyway, if I were out in the jungle and something happened to me and I died and nobody ever heard from me and I never came back, you become kind of immortalized in a way. Everybody's going to remember, like, damn, like that. Yeah. That guy went out there to go find something that meant something to the world, like when you go find a city that people lived in, it shows the whole world, like there's more here than just us. There's something more important that connects all of us. And this is a forgotten part of our history that somebody's going to reclaim to, I guess, contribute to the world of science and exploration and just what we know of the world. And it's something that's like bigger than yourself. And I have some kind of like, do what?
The history, you're talking about the history of all of us. So it is just bigger than one of us,
Yeah. And I don't know. I feel some kind of urge. I'm going to do it safely. I probably won't die. I mean, we live in like a world nowadays where we have Starlink. So, if something happens to me, I can call. Now, if I come across like a looter and then I get shot in the head, that's a whole other thing.
That's why you need a
personal
whip.
Security detail.
Yeah. You need a whip and a 6-shooter. You'd be good to go.
Yeah, I know it. So, and then and a lot of luck too.
Yeah.
But I need to learn to speak like 25 different languages like he does.
Yeah. Dude, you have a rich destiny, man. I like just listening to you, dude. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. Like you want to call it ethereal, metaphysical, or whatever, but like it's more than just a vibe I get from you. You're not projecting a vibe, right? To where you're trying to be disingenuous. This is you, right? I get that from you, the way you talk, and I can see like you're building a life to essentially have the foundation to go and do that. And I really, really hope that you get to fulfill those dreams. I think you will, because it's just, to me, like it's coming off of you. We're not even in the same room.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
that means a lot. That's like overwhelming to hear. It's I don't know, man. It's weird. Like you aspire to be somebody, and then when other people can see it come from you, because I wasn't always like exactly the way I am right now. I don't know how to explain it, but when other people can see it, then it's like overwhelming, because it's like, whoa, it's real now. You know what I mean?
It's
like
happening.
you have this idea. At some point, a light bulb goes off in your head, and I always tell people like the worst advice that I think people can give is when they say be yourself. It's like, no. Ignore that advice. Be the person that you want to be. Like the person that I see myself as. That's what I'm going for every day. I'm not that person, but
just
I'm trying
for the job you want.
Yeah, exactly. And so you pretend that it's real for so long, and then it becomes real.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to like say that I'm like fabricated, but you have like this. I mean, look at all like the Roman and Greek philosophers. They talk
Yeah.
about how like the biggest battle is internal. Like your biggest enemy is inside of your body. It's like this force that's working against you at all times.
When you're
And
talking about
that,
Marcus Aurelius, that's like a root tenet of Stoicism is fighting that inner battle within and
yeah.
overcoming those self limitations.
Yeah. There's I've never actually said this out loud, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's someone inside me that is constantly trying to hold me back. I don't know how to explain it. Like if I go a week without
Mm-hmm.
uploading a video, everybody just know that the inner evil me is winning. You know what I mean? There's something like holding me back, making me like
You should look up
procrastinate.
imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome. Yeah. Well,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I definitely feel that sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's some kind of like inner evil me inside of me that like holds me back and makes me think like this isn't possible. You can't do this. You shouldn't continue. Blah blah blah. It's so
Don't listen to
weird,
it.
man. It's weird how your your mind can do that to itself.
Dude, it's like something. It's like something spiritual that realizes and recognizes your destiny trajectory and is trying to stop you from getting there, and that's part of your hero arc is overcoming that.
Maybe so,
It could
man.
it could also be like a safety net too, right? It's where it's like everything you're trying to accomplish is the unknown, and everything you know now is still relatively safe.
Yeah.
So when you're trying to escape that, you're subconsciously like, no, everything's fine where we're at. We don't need to leave this. We don't need to move forward. Like, stop doing that. So you kind of have to overcome
kind
that.
of protection. Yeah.
That
that's
belief,
really...
though, of whatever you like, fake it till you make it or whatever, is definitely like true. When I first started recruiting, like I was like, man, this is really difficult. And I just started telling everyone I was the world's greatest recruiter. I just started saying that to everyone.
He literally answers the phone like that. Swear to God.
Yeah, I do.
That's how he answers the phone. Yes.
I would just say it and I would do it. And then next thing you know, I was like exceeding goal, putting like a ton of people in, winning awards, all this type of stuff. And I would continue to joke about it. My old flight chief, she would call me up and be like, how's the world's greatest recruiter doing? I was like, great, because I'm the world's greatest recruiter and we're just going to keep pressing. And it just became my thing. And now I have a title belt in my office that says world's greatest recruiter on it that was awarded to me by someone who just thought that was actually real. It's because I just kept doing it over years. So it's the same concept.
Yeah, that's really cool. This is last topic I'll touch on before I stop boring you guys.
We got to talk about Atlantis.
Well,
that's my next question.
So, well, then we shouldn't go off on this other rabbit hole because this doesn't have anything to do with ancient history. Let's go to Atlantis.
Okay,
you sure?
So,
I was just gonna say, when you were talking about recruiters,
I'll just pivot.
It brought me to what I was talking to you guys about originally. About how I was fascinated with the Air Force. That I inquired with the Air Force my junior and senior year of high school. I almost enlisted. I had gone down to the office and spoken with people. My parents don't even know this, so if my parents are watching this, they're gonna be like, "What?"
Sorry, Mom.
But they knew I was interested in the Air Force. But they were like, go to college first. Like, you can go to the Air Force, just go to college first, because if you don't, you probably won't go later because your life will start moving and you won't have time to go back. That's pretty normal.
Really good advice.
Yeah. So never ended up going. But I had, and I don't know, maybe this guy was like BSing me or whatever. But I did decently. I did pretty good on my ASVAB, and I was looking at going into SAUT. Have you guys ever heard of that?
Yeah, we know that is.
We actually we literally a couple weeks ago had a guest on, Trent Siegmiller, who their career field is not called SAUT anymore. It's called Special Reconnaissance.
Yep.
But he's Special Reconnaissance Operator. Yeah.
Yeah, that was like my dream, dude. I watched I didn't care about Hell Week. I didn't care about all the other documentaries. I watched the SAUT documentaries because
I want to be a combat weatherman.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to
if you came into my office, into the world's greatest recruiter's office, I would have had you in. there would have been no.
Well, see, the thing is too now, man. Like you have your degree. Like if you wanted to, right?
Yeah,
you could still do that. You could be a special tactics officer. That's what you would be.
No,
I'm just
I
saying.
probably would never do that. But
This is
you
also
know,
not a partnership with the Air Force.
you don't have to do active duty either.
Yeah,
you can also do guard, do part time, be a part time badass.
Yeah, we know.
My dad was in guard.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah. But yeah, I wanted to go into was that special operations weather team or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just loved the idea of recon. You know, I don't know how much those guys actually see combat, but I thought they do such cool stuff. You know, they're specially trained, but what they do is at least from what I remember, is they're like a support unit for other, you know, special teams that are out there. You know, and I just thought something about that is really cool. And I always thought recon was cool. You know, I guess that kind of ties into like the exploration side of things. Like when you go explore an area, you do recon. You know,
well, here,
send drones out, blah blah blah, whatever.
Let me put it in perspective for you. And I'm going to quote Trent because he's on he has his own podcast. Okay.
Oh, really?
It's him.
I'll check
Yes,
it out.
him, Aaron Love, and then Jared Petrus. Their podcast is called One's Ready. So Trent is special reconnaissance, Aaron is a pararescueman, and then Jared is combat controller, right? And so listening to them one day, they always talk about this, like what is the ideal candidate that we're looking for? And what he said, I'll never forget. He said for SR, he's like, I'm looking for the nerd that won't quit, is what he said. So what you're talking about using all this technology, you know, for recon or whatever else they do, you know, like that's exactly what it is. They're looking for the nerd that won't quit because you're going to be doing a bunch of really high tech stuff on top of a bunch of shit that requires you to sweat your ass off and work your ass off, you know? So I don't know, man, you seem like you might have the personality for it. And if they got you on the podcast, maybe they'd jump your bones and inspire you to do it. I don't know.
Well, I've told my wife, I've told her like I have this like vague I don't think this will actually happen, but I have this like vague plan B that like if what I'm wanting to do doesn't work out, I'll go to the military. You know, I would literally love to have God, I've never said this to anybody. I would love to be in the Air Force.
Forget all the never saids.
Yeah.
To be in the Air Force?
I would love to be in the Air Force and have like a recon job of some kind. I don't care what it is. I want to look at maps. I want to send drones out over landscape and look down at the ground. Like I'm obsessed with maps. I'm an expert on Google Earth. Like I could go to like any country, any city, whatever. You know,
I'm just gonna pull this clip from the episode and just send it to Trent.
Yeah. No, I think I've always thought that recon for the Air Force specifically, that's like my branch. I love the Air Force.
I'm putting your email into the Air Force recruiting system. I'm just doing it.
Just a bunch of phone calls now.
Emails from the Air Force. You know, but yeah, that's like probably once or twice a year I go down the rabbit hole of watching Air Force boot camp, and just like I have like the fantasy of like, man, what if I was there right now? You know, it looks so much.
You live really close.
Oh, I know,
right
man.
there.
I live
the gateway to the Air Force.
Just go.
No,
just knock on the gate.
You see, I wouldn't have the time to make the videos. Okay, and then when I did get the videos, I'd be bald. So you know, like how far along do you have to be before I can have like any more scruff or have my hair as long as it is? You know what I mean?
So
out.
Yeah, out. That's kind of what I'm
like. If you got like a shaving waiver, you could it certainly couldn't look like this. It would look a lot like you right now. You know, your hair, for all intents and purposes, right now is definitely out of regulation.
Yeah.
But you could if you just
up
trimmed
on the
it.
sides.
Yeah, like you see, let's see mine. Like you know, the way it is, you could have all this on top, the bulk we call it.
Oh,
right?
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, dude. Yes, this is totally okay. Like I have a hard part. And
it doesn't
like,
have to be like a high and tight or like shaved like you see in BMT or anything. Or like
that's a basic training thing. Like you get out of basic training, you go to something called tech school, and at tech school, you don't have to have that hair like that. You can have a haircut and grow your hair on top. You know what I mean? A little bit. And tech school standards are still more strict than once you get to what we call operational. And I have heard of kids getting shaving waivers at tech school, but it's a lot harder to get them at tech school than it is once you become operational.
Yeah.
But like, you like I said, if you trimmed up the sides, and with the hair on top, like you could have that haircut in the Air Force minus the sides.
Well,
yeah.
And if you go special recon, which is what
True.
Sao T is now, you'll have
True.
a beard more than likely, because
and they don't give a shit about haircuts half the time anyway.
Yeah,
so
no.
You'd be in places where you can't get a haircut, right? So
yeah, that's true. That's why all the Navy SEALs have like long hair and long beards and everything. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah,
they got to blend into their environment.
Exactly.
Yeah, I definitely get that.
And if we want to do a throwback to the dude with the turban and the beard, that's what they got over there. That's where the current
exactly.
That's where the fighting is currently. So got to fit in.
That's where the fighting's always been.
Yeah, forever. Yeah,
that's where it will always
literally
be.
since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
That's a crazy place. But anyways, I'd love to get to Atlantis. So
cool.
What topics you guys have in mind?
What do you know about the rickshaw structure?
Well, I actually just wrote a video about this. It's called the video is called "Anthropologist Explains the Rickshaw Structure." So this will come out. I don't know. I wrote this 2 days ago, or no, I wrote this on. Yeah, I wrote it on Friday, I think.
Okay.
Basically, paleoarchaeologist, paleogeologist, whatever, or maybe just geologist. They look at the site and they see it as it's a natural structure that I think is caused by it's like magmatic rock moving underneath the surface that creates this crazy looking circle into the ground. I don't know. It's a loose explanation because this is really an anomaly. This is the only thing like this on the Earth. Now, paleoarchaeologists have gone out there and they have found artifacts that date back to, golly, it's like,
just to confirm, we're talking about the Eye of Sahara, right?
Yeah, Mauritania.
Yeah. Okay. I'll pull it up.
Yeah, so they've gone in. I want to tell you this right. Let me look at my script that I wrote for myself.
Yeah.
So, let me see. Okay, yeah. So Rishad,
a little sneak peek of his episode.
Yeah. So basically, it says according to paleoarchaeologists, the Rishad structure is an entirely or majority natural structure, either coming from a meteoric impact or a deep magmatic intrusion, which is it's like, I believe that's magmatic rock or magma under the ground that's not quite coming up to the surface. Okay, so it says paleoarchaeological evidence seems to indicate the presence of people as far back as 1.7 million years ago during the pre-Equulean or Equulean period. And so it says artifacts of this period are typically pear-shaped hand axes thought to have been created and used by Homo erectus, which is like a kind of a cousin to precursor of the Homo sapien, and which that's what we are. And then so I think I go on to also write that there's more recent evidence of habitation is very scarce. Now here's the problem though. This is the silver lining that I give this site. Like on a flat out, if we look at the Younger Dryas from the lens of Atlantis, okay, it does match some of the description that Plato says that Solon visited the temple of Hatshepsut, I think, in Egypt. I think it's the temple of Hatshepsut or Hathor. Maybe it's the temple of Hathor. There's a bunch of H's in ancient Egypt. And he visits these Egyptian priests, and they basically tell him about an ancient civilization that was the precursor to Egypt that existed 9,000 years before and was destroyed by a great flood. It was a city. They described the city. It had, I believe, mountains to the north with a gate to water, I guess, to the west side. And if you look at it, so that kind of this photo isn't directly north to south. You're kind of looking to the west.
North is this way.
Yeah.
South is this way. This is west. This is east.
So you're looking to the west right now. And the geographic features, I think majority at the Richat structure does line up with what Plato says that Solon said about Atlantis, right? What Solon said that the Egyptian priest told him about Atlantis. The difficult part here to reconcile is that there's just flat out no evidence. There's just not, there's no structures. What is weird is that they did a LiDAR scan of the area maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And it was like this real snotty lady who did a, I shouldn't say that.
No, dude, you're good.
So, it's okay. Said.
Yeah, so there's this lady who...
she was super nice.
Yeah, she... I can't go into more details because, whatever. But so she leads this expedition or whatever to examine the Richat structure, and she runs LiDAR over it. And she basically is going out there to prove that Atlantis was not at the Richat structure, right? And then she does LiDAR scan to prove it, and she makes a whole documentary about it. And the LiDAR scans weren't included in the documentary. They did not show what the LiDAR scans found, which is really strange. But of course,
that's
it's
suspicious.
But the documentary didn't make any waves like in pop culture, so nobody really spoke about the fact that, like, hey lady, you actually show the LiDAR scans that you took out there.
How expensive is it to go do something like that, LiDAR scans? Like, is that something that, like, you could...
expensive?
Really?
Yeah. It's not like a, like they're coming out with LiDAR drones now, but a LiDAR drone might be able to scan the area of a house and a yard, like a couple acres or something like that. A LiDAR drone might be able to do that, but it has to sit above the area and constantly send waves up and down and up and down. And it's a small, tiny little area. If you're wanting to fly over the Richat structure, which I forget how big it is, but I know it's massive. What is it, like 1 mile long or 1.5 miles long?
It is pretty big. I'll look it up. Or is it like
10 miles long? I don't know. It's crazy how big it is. I think it might be closer to 10 miles long. I'm not an expert on the Richat, but
just for reference, Luke, this Plato writes about what Solon told him. Is this in the Aeneid? He's talking about Atlantis.
It might be. I don't know the exact.
It's 25 miles across.
Whoa! Dang, 25 miles.
Yeah. So that's so you got to think when you think about it. When you think about an ancient city, they're not driving cars, right?
Yeah.
Those freaking huge for an ancient city. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The capital of Rome had 1 million people in it, and it wasn't close to being that big because everybody's walking.
Yeah.
But isn't the idea of, like, if you look at this photo here I have up, is that it's like there's a lot of water for Atlantis, like that would be in there and stuff. So they're traveling by boat or whatever. It doesn't necessarily have to all be true. Like city. It could have been rings of cities, kind of like what they're comparing here on the screen.
But still, think of the look. I mean, if this is obviously this is just a rendering, but consider the architectural expertise that would have to go into this. You know what I mean? Is this like a floating city, like in Mesoamerica, right? Because wasn't Tenochtitlan like partly a floating city, Luke? Or is that like a misnomer?
It's kind of what they say, but really no. They just Well, I mean, I guess it depends on what you call a floating city, but they were able to raise the ground level so that it was above water. Like, you come in and you build like a mound, and so that it comes above water. Like that was really common in the Amazon for sure. That might be where it came, or it might be where it comes from, is the Amazon. They would raise the ground level to be above like the water table, or when it would flood to be above where it would flood. Makes so Tenochtitlan is kind of like that. Okay, so but getting back to it, there's a lot of interesting similarities between the Richat, and there's also artifacts in Egypt that do depict Egypt with like, have you seen those ostrich eggs that seem to show something that's similar to the Richat structure or Atlantis? Yeah, you guys should look at it. There's there's ostrich eggs. It's giant bird eggs. that people, they depict the Nile, they depict like a reservoir that comes off of the Nile or like a little lake. They depict the pyramids, and they depict what seems to be the Richat structure, which is really strange. But there's just no hard evidence for it yet. But like I say, the LiDAR scans that were taken don't reveal anything. Or I'm sorry, they didn't reveal anything. But at the same time, if there was some kind of cataclysmic event, so say in the North Atlantic, there's a comet that hits the Earth at the end of the Younger Dryas, and it basically ends the Ice Age, right? Well, you know, if you look at the Western Sahara, it looks like water was rushed up onto the side of the coast, and it's like dragging the geology back down. You can see that kind of dragging of water, and not to mention it's all completely covered in salt. So it could be, you know, salt from 12,000 years ago being spewed up onto the side of Africa and washed back down. Well, if something was so devastating that it completely removed the cultural, isn't that interesting? So if you look at the top of that, around the little hole in the egg, and I guess maybe that's like a hole somebody poked to empty out the yolk. I have no idea. But okay, so it's a Nubian egg. Yeah, Nubian egg. That's interesting. So but yeah, if a cataclysm removed the entire cultural layer, then I don't know. You know, if something is so devastating that it removes the entire cultural layer, then maybe there is no evidence. But then what you have to do as an anthropologist, because a lot of people who are just like enthusiasts, you know, they'll say, well, yeah, it could have just removed that whole layer. Well, okay, let's accept that. Let's go look at places where there's more or just as much evidence of the devastation. Because if you look around the eye of the Sahara, even in the photo that Zach was just showing, you can see that like it's like the sand being pulled back down to the west coast of Africa. Well, let's go look at ancient sites that are in that area, and let's find and see if anything goes back to the early pre-Stone Age or Neolithic era of 9,000 something BC, and let's see if in that same cultural layer if we can find organic material from people that were living around at that same time. Can we find things that are nearby? And if we find a whole plethora of it, what do we infer from that? Then does it make it more or less likely that a whole city could have been washed away? So that's the tough part about the Richat structure itself. However, about Atlantis, well, I mean, look at all the stories of ancient cities that we have, like Zep Tepi, that comes from ancient Egypt, Atlantis that comes from Solon and Plato, Aztlan, which comes from the Aztecs. Do you know about this?
I feel like I've heard this before.
Yeah. So the Aztecs have have a city that they say that they originate from, which is called Aztlan.
Okay.
So
I brought this up because apparently they think that this dotted line here was like an ancient river that used to go across like the entire Sahara Desert, because the Sahara has a lot of evidence that it used to be very tropical, that it was like covered in like trees. It wasn't a desert.
Yeah, of course.
Way back then, so it's just like this really wet area. But this would line up kind of like right where the eye of the Sahara is. So there's like a river here, and that is supposed to connect like where Egypt was, where the Nile, and then where Atlantis would have been.
Yeah, there are even maps that show these east-west running rivers through Africa. Have you guys ever seen videos on this?
I have,
yeah.
Yeah. So there are maps that show that, and I don't know that the maps that are shown today that we have evidence of today, I don't know that that's the actual map, or I don't know that the person who drew that map is the person that went in and explored that river. But it could just be local knowledge. Like people, they piece it all together. You know, the person who makes the map didn't visit every single site and place that was on that map. It's pieced together from source maps and also just from tales. Like people go, yeah, there is a giant river that runs from this city to this city. I know that. Oh, how do you know that? Oh, well, my grandfather knew that. Oh, well, how did he know that? Well, his dad knew that. You know what I mean?
Now you got me thinking about the Piri Reis map.
Yeah, exactly. So Piri Reis map is interesting. I don't quite know what to think of it because I think a large chunk of it is missing, right?
There is, yeah, but it depicts Antarctica.
Yeah, yeah, it depicts Antarctica at a time when it wasn't like glacially covered.
Right.
So that's kind of an interesting thing. But then a lot of people also make compelling cases that it's also just depicting South America, but it's like the paper curves down, so it's not a perfect piece of paper
Interesting.
for a map.
Mm-hmm.
Or if it even is a piece of paper, am I wrong in saying it's written on
Might be vellum, I think.
skin or something? I'm not exactly sure, but um, but they're also missing parts of the map. So the Piri Reis map is very interesting, and it also seems to depict like inland in South America. Have y'all ever seen?
Mm-hmm.
Have y'all ever seen that? Like it's showing depictions of people in mountain ranges that are a little further inland. If you're pulling it up right now. Oh, okay. Here's a wrist shot. So
Yeah, I totally
what are all those
tangented there.
dots?
So these all dots are apparently like ancient remains or like human type structures or stuff that they found that were left by humans inside the structure. So
Very
these are all the
interesting.
locations of where things have been found left by ancient humans.
Yeah,
And
I
some
just
of them
need to say real
some of them
quick.
could be as small as like a bowl. Some could be like actual human remains apparently. And then other ones are like a tower. So like down here it's kind of hard to see, but apparently down here is like a burial field. So there was
Yeah.
like a bunch of bodies here. This thing here I guess was a tower. These were like man-made mounds that are connected to the actual structure itself. So there are a lot of human elements in this thing.
You know, I could get you guys in touch with somebody who's actually been there. I bet you he'd come
Oh,
up on
please.
your podcast. Have you ever heard of his middle name's either Stig or Stag, but David Stag Hansen? You ever heard of him?
That name sounds familiar.
I haven't, no.
Yeah, I think he's attempting to like break into this world of these ancient civs guys, kind of like me, I guess. And he has been out to the Richat structure twice, and I can get you guys in touch with him, and I bet
That'd
you
be
he'd come on
amazing.
your pod and talk to you.
Thank you.
He has tons of videos of him out there. Check out his YouTube channel, David Stag Hansen or Stig Hansen.
Okay.
Super cool guy. He wanted me to come out to the Richat with him in January, but I just didn't have the money to do it because it's freaking expensive. And I was a little scared of going out to Mauritania, Africa, but he says it's awesome out there. And I'm also kind of at the point now where I'm like, dude, you know, oh well,
Dude,
you know.
Yeah. I actually have a
Duty
friend
calls.
that just went not that long ago to Mauritania, and he's got a lot of really cool videos. He said the people there are amazing, super friendly.
Yeah.
And like they're teaching him how to make like coffee the traditional way that they're making it. And yeah, it looked really cool. And I just need to correct myself real quick. I don't know. I would need to look it up. I thought aren't they a francophone originally, or not? Well, not originally, but you know what I mean. I just need to correct myself. So Virgil wrote the Aeneid. It wouldn't have been Plato. So I just need to say that because I asked if it was,
yeah. No, you're okay. I don't. Yeah. I really don't know. You know, I'm really well versed in some areas of ancient Greece, but like some people can rattle it all off, and it's never been my thing.
Yeah. So where do you think the best evidence exists for Atlantis? Is it in your opinion, is it the Richat structure? There are other things because it doesn't. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no. You know, to be honest with you, I don't. Man, it's tough. I probably have a completely different view than anybody else does about Atlantis. You know, I haven't dived into the Azores very much. It's you know, I know Randall talks about it. Randall's a freaking genius guy.
Randall. Yeah.
You know, so if I were to dive into, I think he has like a 10-hour lecture on why the Azores is like the most likely place for Atlantis. I haven't watched all of that lecture series. I just have, like I said, so many other things that are like pertinent that I need to study right now. But what makes the most sense to me is that perhaps, I mean, I definitely think Atlantis or Zep Tepi, this mother culture, older civilization, I think to some extent, these stories are definitely true. I mean, there's just
I
no
agree.
doubt in my mind that it's true. You know, they
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have said it if it was completely made up. And a lot of these things aren't made up. Like they thought forever that Troy wasn't real. They thought that
Right.
Trojan horse just was a made up Greek story. No, it was
Mm-hmm.
real. You know, but
Yeah.
they found it. But what did they end up finding out about Troy? It was way smaller than the story. I think it's the Iliad or
Mm-hmm.
something like that.
I think you're right. I think it is the
Or
Iliad.
Homer's Iliad or Homer's Odyssey or
I'm
something
pretty
like
sure.
that.
Yeah, Homer. Yeah. Let's not screw it. I'm pretty sure it is the Iliad. And
I'm gonna
I think he. Yeah. Fuck it.
yeah,
Full
yeah.
send. Yeah.
So you know, going live like at 10 p.m. is the best time to talk about ancient history. You
For
know,
sure. Yeah.
get all the minor details wrong, make
Yeah.
yourself look stupid. You know,
Yeah.
but no, I mean it's oh well. If I'll have people jump down my throat about stuff, and I'm like, dude, if you were studying history as much as I am, you would get so much crap wrong because
Mm-hmm.
people when they're not like they don't dive all the way into it, they know about a few things and it's easy to remember a few things. But you
Mm-hmm.
get so far deep in it, it's actually easy to get confused. Because
I
there's
always
so much more beneath the surface than
I
you
always think
think.
it's so funny how like someone can like take some little small thing you got wrong and that makes it so everything you said is now wrong. It's like
Invalid.
no, it
Yeah.
was just a human error. You can
Yeah,
overlook
yeah.
Dude,
it,
I always
glance
tell people
past
like
it.
that, dude. If I'm wrong, then do better.
Yeah. But they don't.
Yeah.
But so anyways, but they ended up finding out that Troy did exist, but it was just way smaller than legend built it up to be.
Right.
And so here's my view on Atlantis.
Mm-hmm.
Hyper realistic answer. It definitely existed, but they created earthen structures that are kind of like mounds that we see in North America. And they created those during a time during the African humid period, which is during the Green Sahara. It wasn't just the Sahara; it was all of the Middle East was green as well. So they created earthen structures and also wooden structures, but they were an organized civilization that left something memorable that somebody was remembering thousands, potentially actually 9,000 years later, like the priest at the temple, the Egyptian priest at the temple tell Solon, who Solon tells Plato, whatever.
Right.
Potentially it's just something like that. It's just this legend that's built up into something, and maybe it really was a circular city, but really they're just mounds that people are living on. And maybe it is surrounded by water, but maybe all the structures are made out of wood, and there's no evidence of it anymore. I don't know. Or all these really strange structures that you see in ancient Egypt. I would say Egypt is like one of the best places to look. It's just some really strange stuff going on in Egypt or ancient Peru. Those are like the two places. I really don't look that much at the Rishat or the Azores. There's been tons of people who travel to the Azores, and there's just nothing that shows up about a culture going back that far. It's the same with the Rishat. The Rishat is freaking bizarre to look at it, and visually it just matches the description, but there's just zero evidence thus far. So because of that, I don't really look at the Rishat. I think it's fascinating, and I had my time where I was certainly reading about the Rishat every day, but not really anymore. Well, some of the things that I would look at are look at the very visually simplistic, but not so simplistic. It's like deceivingly simplistic structures or architecture construction projects that use these massive megalithic stones that carve them in ways that are extremely strange. I'll explain that in a second. And there's also no hieroglyphs, no art, no nothing, no writing of who built it. The Osirion is a good example of that. I think like the Osiris shaft. What's the Serapeum? I really think that the Sphinx is very strange as well. The weathering in the bed, like the bed of the Sphinx or the pit of the Sphinx. Everybody knows this story. It's so unambiguously water erosion. And here's something that most people don't realize is so they when people study like I guess like when normal Egyptologists or geologists, when they write off, well, it probably is wind and sand erosion, or if it's water erosion, it's just been from light rains over the last 4,500 years. And the problem is, so they say the Sphinx was built in about 2550 BC is when they say it was
Okay.
built. So then they
Okay.
say, well, it's been 4,500 years. Maybe it can weather that much. No, it hasn't been that long. Actually, if it was built around 2500 BC, at about 1400 BC, around the time of the pharaoh Akhenaten, somebody went there and placed the dream stela. Do you know what that is? It's the big stela that sits between the paws. That was placed there in about 1400 BC. And they had been trying to repair the Sphinx and repair it, but it's so old and it's deteriorating so quickly that they decide to go in. There's a pharaoh who decided to go in and they buried it around 1400 BC. So according to traditional Egyptology, it was only exposed for 1100 years, and it has that kind of erosional, showing or pattern.
Yeah.
That's really unlikely. So the Sphinx, in my opinion, I say this on the Concrete podcast, I think the Sphinx is a better example of this lost civilization of some kind than even the pyramids are.
Yeah.
There's one really, if it's proven, and there's an expedition that went there this last week, so I'm looking forward to getting with them. Have you ever heard of, have you ever seen the YouTube channel Ancient Architects? Have y'all seen him? Or History for Granite? Have you ever seen him?
I feel like I've seen Ancient Architects before.
Yeah.
Is this Robert Schoch that you're talking about?
No, not Robert Schoch. It's
Okay.
it's Matt Simpson.
Okay.
Yeah, so Robert Schoch, he's the geologist at Boston University. So, but they went there and they went inside the Bent Pyramid, and there are cedars of Lebanon that were used in the construction of the ceiling of the Bent Pyramid. And so, like, the way we open up the Concrete podcast is I had told Danny, I was like, yeah, I don't know, man. The Egyptians may have really built the pyramids, and he's like, what? No way. And I was like, yeah. Well, one huge glaring problem with that is, so the story behind the Bent Pyramid, the reason it's bent is because, and like this is accepted basically everywhere. I don't even see people who are skeptical of this deny this. They were building the pyramid so vertical that it was so heavy on the inner chambers that it caused the pyramid to be unstable on the inside. So Senefru, the pharaoh, says, okay, well, we're not going to build it so vertical anymore. We're going to make the top, 40% of it more shallow. And so it ends up looking like it's bent in the middle, right? To take weight off of the inner chambers. Well, he, that's acknowledged by basically everybody that it was built that way because they didn't want to make the inner chambers unstable. But there are people who are still skeptical, and they look at it and they go, well, yeah, but I mean, look at the architecture. We don't have an understanding of how the Egyptians were able to do this, which is true. We don't even know how they built this, which is true. We don't know how they quarried and carried all these stones to this site, which is also true. The problem is, inside, built into the structure, are logs called cedars of Lebanon that came from the Middle East, from the Phoenician area. And when the trees are studied, they date back 4,500 years, and to exactly the time of the Old Kingdom, and they are built into the ceiling of the Bent Pyramid. Now, here's the problem. This is what I was telling Danny. This is why I think this is such a glaring thing about if the pyramids are the best example. That's like the first one people jump to of this lost civilization. If that roof, and engineers and architects can go look at the pyramid themselves, and there are people who go in there like, yeah, this thing is freaking dangerous. Like, this roof is going to collapse at some point. Maybe not in our lifetime, maybe the next lifetime, it's going to collapse. And and nobody disagrees that the roof is being, so you can see it there on the bottom left. Wheels on a sharp cart, be like, yeah, that's funny. So there's nobody, even skeptics, who disagree that the roof is unstable. Now here's the problem. If the roof was unstable 12,000 years ago, it probably wouldn't have lasted long enough for the Egyptians to walk around on the inside and be like, we need to put some dang trees in the ceiling in here.
Right.
You know? So probably it was built at the same time that those trees were put in the ceiling, which is a giant glaring issue in the idea of the pyramids not being built by the Egyptians, because it's the exact same architecture. It's the precursor that you can like, if we look at it in the order that Egyptology says, you go to the Saqqara Step Pyramid, and I'm sure you guys have seen that. Then you go to the Pyramid of Maidum. Have you guys ever heard of that?
I don't think so.
No.
It's the collapsed pyramid. So the outer structure was made in some kind of limestone that wasn't, or like a sandstone of some kind, that wasn't very stable. So it just the whole outside it's like powder dust now. The inner chambers survived, and I'm not sure what they're made out of. Maybe it's limestone or maybe it's granite. So that was the first pyramid built by Senefru. Then he goes to build the next one, but he builds it too tall, so he's got to make the roof more shallow. And he completes it, but he's like, nope, that's not good enough. So then he builds the actual first Great Pyramid. So there's actually 4, which is the Red Pyramid. Have you guys ever seen this before?
No.
Yeah, look up the Red Pyramid. It's the first Great Pyramid. So you have the 3 Great Pyramids on the Giza Plateau. There's actually one that came before it, and it's made out of a red limestone. So when the sun shines on it, it's like this giant glaring red pyramid. It's super cool. Now, here's another interesting mystery about this, though. At the Saqqara necropolis, where the Step Pyramid is constructed, you can see the funerary texts and hieroglyphics that are written about the pharaoh Djoser, who we know was buried in that pyramid, because we found I think like DNA evidence of his ankle inside of the sarcophagus that he's supposed to be in. Okay, for whatever reason his body was looted, but they left the ankle behind.
With his ankle?
Yeah, that's the Red Pyramid.
This is the Red Pyramid.
That's really neat.
Oh, you can see the Bent Pyramid,
yeah. So the Red Pyramid is like the coolest, most unknown pyramid in Egypt.
That's legit.
So what's this now? This isn't a perfect explanation for Egypt, though, because at the Saqqara necropolis, like I was saying, we do see funerary texts and hieroglyphics that depict the exact person that was buried in here and him in the afterlife, visiting divine sanctuaries and performing miracles and all this stuff in the afterlife, right? Well, why don't we see that in the Pyramid of Meidum? And then we don't see it in the Bent Pyramid. And then we don't see it in the Red Pyramid. All 3 of those were built by Djoser's successor, Senefru, so they say, right? Okay, well, after Senefru, he has a son named Khufu. Khufu builds the Great Pyramid on the Giza Plateau, the biggest one. Okay, but then Khufu doesn't put his name anywhere. Khufu doesn't build any monuments outside of the pyramid to put his name on. He doesn't carve his name. There's no hieroglyphs anywhere inside the pyramid. His body was never found. And then he has a son, Khafre, who builds a pyramid that's like 10 meters shorter out of respect for his father. And then he doesn't put his name anywhere on the pyramid. And then he has a son, Menkure, who builds a pyramid. And then he doesn't put his name anywhere on the pyramid. And so you mean to tell me, like, 4 generations of rulers, 6 pyramids, not one of their names are carved anywhere. But the precedent had already been set up before them. Djoser put his name around the pyramid. So that's a real mystery, And I said, it actually goes along with what I said earlier. Like, you look at a lot of these bigger megalithic sites that have no art on them. They have no hieroglyphics. The Egyptians, it's important to acknowledge that they actually didn't value art. Like, they didn't value ingenuity in the way that like the Greeks did. They wanted everything to stay the same, because when you were carved in stone, that was timeless. When everything's changed in Egypt falls apart. But they do have hieroglyphs and they do have art, but they don't value innovation. So they don't value like art changing over time. They wanted everything to stay exactly the same for thousands of years. They wanted it to be like timeless.
Mm.
Um, but they were big on marking their names on things. Like Ramses the Great marked his name on everything all across Egypt. Of course, he lived 1,000 years after that, supposedly. But yeah, I mean, you have this giant like plot hole, I guess, in the story of ancient Egypt, which is like, why does it start off with pharaohs using funerary text, and then we have this giant gap during the most enigmatic construction projects of the entire ancient world? We don't actually know who wrote it because it wasn't written in stone like everything else in Egypt is.
That's
Huge
weird.
mystery there, you know? Yeah, so it leaves a person like me who I'm pretty down the middle. Like, I try to be pretty reasonable. Even I am like, well, you know, the cedars of Lebanon are 4,500 years old, and they were built into the roof. And if the roof was constructed 12,000 years ago, it would have caved in by now.
Yeah.
Because any architect will
It's
tell you this.
logical.
Any architect will tell you this roof ain't gonna last another 8,000 years.
Yeah.
So, but then it's also like, okay, well, why isn't his name written anywhere in this? And when the pyramid before it did have the name written in it, so a lot of
That's
mystery
weird.
in Egypt. That's why so many people are fascinated by this topic.
So do you ascribe to the belief that the Egyptians found the Sphinx and then they changed its appearance to give it that head of the pharaoh?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I subscribe. So here's the problem. So I am an anthropologist. I can't necessarily, when I can help it, I shouldn't subscribe to anything, right? I should let the data point me towards my I should let the data point me towards my conclusions. But you look at the proportions of it, and you look at other sphinx that are around Egypt. The Egyptians had an idea of proper proportions. Like they constructed plenty of other sphinx that weren't just they had sphinx that weren't meant to be lions. Like they had rams and different things like that. And when they create it, it's properly proportioned, but the head is tiny, right? So it certainly seems like, at least I would think, that it was probably a lion. And that's what everybody thinks, and even Egyptologists say it's a human lion. I would not be surprised in the slightest if an earlier culture at some point carved that into a lion's head, and a pharaoh went in there and carved it into a portrait of himself instead. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Would it surprise me if it was done 12,000 years ago?
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, well, like it would surprise me, but not really. I mean, it's
stuff keeps getting older.
Yeah. Things keep on getting older, and Göbekli Tepe really shows that people at exactly that time could do things like that.
That amazes me.
Yeah. But is this at the same time as Göbekli Tepe proof of Atlantis, or like a world spanning civilization? I don't think so. But it does prove that far back in time there were civilizations that were that big. And does that prove that like that civilization was in contact with people in ancient Peru? No, but there's a whole lot of similarities there, and it kind of seems like the web is slowly starting to get to a place where traditional academia never thought it would be, right? So what I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle of Graham Hancock and academia. It's probably somewhere right in this area.
I agree. It's one of my favorite things about Graham is he's not afraid to go out on a limb. But the Göbekli Tepe has intrigued me ever since I heard about it, and I think the biggest thing that gives significance to me about it is that when it was supposedly built, human beings were still just hunter-gatherers, incapable of building something like that, and it totally casts those assumptions to the wind. I've heard the theory too that it was because it's built the way it's built, that it's like the first indicator of like organized religion. Is that something that that anthropologists believe, or is that more just kind of like the internet folklore of it?
Oh no. I mean, Göbekli Tepe like totally blows all preconceived ideas out of the water. It definitely shows that I'm pretty sure that there are astronomical alignments at Göbekli Tepe, like these stela are aligned to planets in the sky. The problem with Göbekli Tepe is I think that only 5 or 10% of the entire site has been excavated. It's like a giant site. The problem with it is it's not a city, right? So, when people jump real quickly to, and I sound like I'm pushing people's hopes down. I want everybody to know.
No, man. Be
I just
realistic.
love the ancient world. Like anything to do with ancient history, I love it. It doesn't have to be Atlantis. Like I think some people grasp onto Atlantis and they want that to be true. Like, bro, people get attached to Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. All that is real, dude. Ancient history is Lord of the Rings. All of this, there's this world is just, I don't know. It's amazing. I'm infatuated with all of it. So even though I'm saying this may not be what some people think it is, I don't want to like dampen people's enjoyment of something, right? But the problem with Göbekli Tepe is it's clearly, I don't want to necessarily say religious, but it is a site of particular significance that is not somebody's home, right? It had some kind of purpose to the site, but there's not a city connected to it. And if you're going to make a connection between Göbekli Tepe and Atlantis, well, where's the city? Where are all the people living? Because if Atlantis spans all the way across the planet and connects people to ancient Peru, then I would imagine that they're going to have I'm going to imagine they're going to have cities that are at least as nice as Rome, right?
Yeah.
So what I tell people is when I think of Atlantis, I think if it existed, and dude, I mean, we didn't even get to this, but like, I mean, think about the way that the Bible and the Book of Enoch, depicts the time before the cataclysm. That clearly there were beings on this earth who were maybe the same beings that people are experiencing when they're on their ayahuasca journeys or something like that. Yeah. And there's some kind of higher civilization that's going on. I don't know that it spans the whole planet. I don't even know that they're all connected. It could be ancient Peru and something going on in Turkey and in Egypt that are not all connected to each other. Not physically that the people know of, but maybe there's something going on outside of our reality that connects it all. I don't know. That's kind of woo-woo. But, I tell people that if there's some kind of ancient lost technology that's able to build these structures, it was probably a perfect, non-upgradable, simple technology that maximized, if there is a grand design of our earth in a way that materials need to interact with each other, it was probably a perfect understanding of that with a perfectly simple, clean form of technology. I'm not saying wires. I'm not saying something that could run your phone. I'm saying maybe something as simple as like a mirror made out of the right type of stone or mineral that you reflect light off of it, and it's a freaking laser that cuts granite. Like that's a totally out there thing. But I'm thinking like if we had a perfect understanding of our reality, what kind of wild stuff could we do? And I would think probably Atlantis we would see it and we would think of Greece or Rome, something like that. When I think of that, I would not think that they have a civilization that rivals our own in terms of technology. I would think that people are looking for a lost Rome. You know what I mean? Yeah. Something similar, something to that effect. That's made out of
images of like the Greek Acropolis at its height or something.
That's the image that I get. Something like a Greek Acropolis at its height. The Parthenon, something like that, with a perfect understanding of simple, non-upgradable technology. That's getting way out there, but that would be the extent of what I would believe. That I wouldn't be surprised if it was true in some way. Now, here's the other thing. Is I also wouldn't be surprised if one day they just found one city that dates back to 10,000 BC that is on par with Athens, Greece. And then people are like, this is Atlantis. This is Atlantis. It's not connected to the whole planet, but this is a freaking city this big 12,000 years ago. And then we all kind of accept, okay, well, it's not actually connected to ancient Peru. Ancient Peru just has its own thing going on that's really hard to explain. But I would feel really comfortable saying there's probably a city out there that's on scale with Göbekli Tepe, that's actually a full-on city, that's actually made out of stone. And when people find it, they'll go, oh, this is Atlantis. This is where all the stories come from. Just like they found
amazing.
gold. That would be my explanation of Atlantis. And they probably really did something exceptional for people to be talking about it through the Bible, through the Quran, through all these ancient texts. And then somewhere along the way, there was ancient text that made its way through Egypt that we don't have access to now, that these priests knew about, that they told Solon about, So there were clearly a bunch of people talking about a city of some kind or a civilization of some kind that existed way earlier. So yeah, I feel like I have like a kind of a different view on it than most people. I don't really subscribe to the worldwide thing, but I really wouldn't be surprised. I really wouldn't be surprised if Atlantis was one civilization that existed in the old world 12,000 years ago. And I wouldn't be surprised if they found the city and they go, boom, this is it. It definitely did exist,
Yeah, no, I could see that too. Graham was my introduction to the Younger Dryas and the pre-cataclysmic idea of a civilization before that. And I could totally see random pops up of culture and civilization and all that prior to that. Not necessarily global culture on the way we think about it today in 2023, but I know we're coming up on 3 hours, but I just want to ask you one question. Okay, you've brought it up a few times, and we've made it almost back to a few times. Is you brought up when we talk about King Tut, and then you brought up Akhenaten, right? So Akhenaten was King Tut's father, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Right. And so King Tut's original name wouldn't have been Tutankhamun; it would have been Tutankhaten, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Tutankhamun like that.
Yeah. So Zach, I know you're probably like, and everybody else are probably talking about shit that nobody knows what the fuck I'm talking about. But I've always wondered, like, what was the whole point of Akhenaten saying, now we're not going to be polytheistic, we're going to be monotheistic, and it causing all of the crazy chaotic ripples that it did. Art changed, right? You have the Amarna period of Egyptian art, all of that changed, and then King Tut reverted back to what the original idea of Egyptian religion was. Like, what I've always wondered what the point, what somebody else's professional opinion is on what the point of that was. Just all of a sudden this weird blip where he's like, nope, monotheism.
Well, I honestly don't know the answer to that, but I do admire that you are pretty well read as far as not many people who like Egypt know about what was going on in like 1300 BC Egypt. Most people know about Old Kingdom, but not many people know about like mid to New Kingdom Egypt, especially not around. I mean, Akhenaten is famous and Nefertiti is famous and King Tut are famous, but mostly just famous for stuff that's happened recently. Like 100 years ago, King Tut's tomb was found. But man, dude, it could be as simple as he was a freaking psycho because when he built so do you know that he built his own city? Like he traveled so
was
he
it
was
called
in
Amarna?
Well, I thought his city was called Aten.
Was it? Zach, can you look it up real quick? I don't want to be fucking wrong, that's for sure.
City of what? What am I looking at?
Or he moved the capital to Amarna or something like that.
Oh, well, that may be where the location was called, but I think he called the city Aten because
I'm sure you're right.
I think he named himself Akhenaten, and Aten was kind of I think that's reference to the god of the sun because he worshipped the sun disk. In all the hieroglyphs you see, it's the circular sun disk with the rays coming down on him.
Yeah, I trust Luke way more than you trust me listening.
Dude, I could be wrong. Yeah. I find myself saying something sometimes, and then I look into it. And I'm like, how could I be so wrong? I thought I knew this 100%. So
yeah, it's all that knowledge in your brain.
But it is Aten, Aten.
Okay, okay,
It
but
didn't last long.
No, heck no, it didn't.
1349 to 1336 BC is roughly where they think it exists, existed
So
and thrived.
1300s BC. It's a super interesting time though, man. So what happens is he basically says that all of Egypt is monotheistic, and all Egyptians are like, "What?" So he had a lot of revolt against him, but he was the pharaoh, so he had like ultimate power. So he decides to, and this, like, a lot of people think that maybe he was divinely inspired, like maybe he knew something that somebody else didn't, or maybe he was just all about himself, right? Because he told people that he was the physical incarnation of the god Aten, which was the sun god, or the god of the sun disk, which is really just the sun. They thought that the sun was like a flat disk that was in the sky. So what's interesting is he had a vision. He was probably he probably was high off of like something similar to ayahuasca, like the lotus flower or something like that. I can't quite remember what it is. But Egyptians, they depict this, and he was probably, when they say that, they go into this shamanic state, or they have shamans in ancient Egypt, I can almost guarantee they're just getting absolutely blazed on something and seeing something. Whether or not that something is real, I don't know, because it said that he would see the sun. He knew where he was going to build his city when he would see the sun setting between two mountains, to rises in the east, sets in the west, to the west. And so I believe that the capital was in Memphis, Egypt at the time, right? So Memphis, Egypt is in Lower Egypt, which is actually northern Egypt because the Nile runs north. Okay. So so it's in Memphis, Egypt. And then at one point, I think it was in Hierakonpolis, which is it's like the Egyptian name for the actual capital of Upper Egypt. Golly, I can't remember the name. But anyways, so you have Lower Egypt and you have Upper Egypt. Well, this place that he found himself when he's going on this expedition is right in the middle between the capitals of Upper and Lower Egypt. Okay, it's right in the middle, and he wakes up. Or no, I'm sorry. It's the sunrise. He was going to see the sunrise between two mountains because it was from the east. Because I was thinking he's on the east side of the Nile River, so he wouldn't see the mountains rising on the west, or he wouldn't see the mountains on the west. He see mountains on the east. So the sun rises, and he wakes up at like 5 o'clock in the morning to go, and he's like stressed out because he can't find where the new capital of Egypt is going to be. Wakes up early in the morning and he walks out away from the camp, like with some of his guards or whatever. And as the sun rises, it rises between two mountains from the east. And it just so happened to be exactly from where he was standing. And you can go see that sunrise today. Wow. And so he built the city of Aten right there, and it was almost like divine prophecy in some way, even though the city didn't turn out to be anything. This is why I say, like, there's a lot of really weird crap that it kind of all adds up. So he built the city of Aten there, and the reason I say earlier that he may have just been a psycho is because it's documented that the working conditions were terrible. Like, there are people that are buried under the structures that are constructed there because blocks fell on them, and they just kept the people underneath the block because it wasn't worth moving the block. Yeah, and people would like people were starving, blocks would fall on their legs, on their arms, and break their legs and arms. Bodies were mutilated and like thrown into graves. I mean, there are graves around the city of Aten that they know graves? That they know were from workers that were there, because they're like, mid-aged guys like us that get their arm broken or their leg broken, and then they just throw them in a grave or something. So they die. And so they're like workers' graves, and they know that they were workers because there's no females anywhere, so you've got all these men here building this city. And so it just didn't work out. Like, he didn't utilize Egypt's economy properly at all. So he and Nefertiti are pretty hated throughout Egypt. And Tutankhamun, or he wasn't very well liked either. I think that they were probably glad that he died young. So it could have been that he was onto something, but if he was, it really didn't flesh out in anything because his city collapsed like
Man, I don't think it was fully built, because you go to it today and it's like foot mounds of buildings. Like the buildings aren't even there anymore. But the cool thing that came out of that is, the bust of Nefertiti, like the little statue that was found like buried in the ground in the corner of some building. In like it was a building that they think of that was a like an artisan who was making busts of these people, like sculptures, and he was working on Nefertiti when the city of Aten was abandoned, and he just left the bust in the house. He didn't think it was worth bringing with him back to Memphis or wherever he lived, so he left it there, and somehow nobody ever showed up and looted it, and it ended up probably fell on the ground and got buried by the sands of time, and somebody found it in like the early 1900s. Yeah.
Dang.
Isn't that like that thing of all things? How does that go untouched,
It's like he was commissioned to do this, and then their shit fell apart, and he's like, I'm done with this, like, craziness, and then just thousands of years later, some random person.
Yeah.
That's one of the coolest things about history, is that you can just stumble into something and it could just be 1,000 years old. Like those people that find those like Viking swords in the North Sea and stuff like that. It's just like you're out there one day skipping stones and you're like, it is a sword. It's just in this tide pool,
Yeah, it's crazy.
Think about that with Earth sometimes. Just even over here in New York, you have the Adirondacks and like the Appalachian Mountain Range. It's like the oldest. It's the oldest mountain range on Earth today.
Yeah, it's the first mountain range.
Yeah, and it's been just whittled down. It used to be higher than Mount Everest, and it's just been whittled down through like weather and erosion that they're not that tall anymore.
It was twice as high as Mount Everest, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. But like when I go and hike them, I'm like, the rock I'm standing on is the oldest rock potentially on this planet. Like that's wild to me.
Yeah, it's amazing, man. Like I wish, sometimes I wish like before I die, I could be like, God, why don't you just let me be like an invisible being that can fly through time and space for a while? I'll come back in like 1,000 years,
Yeah.
And I would just love to like rewind time and watch things unfold. You know what I mean? Travel to the other side of the universe and see what it's like, I really want to know. I really want to know. This is what I think about.
Okay.
Well, we'll close on this one because I got my day job in the morning. I gotta go.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good. I know, dude. We've done like almost 3 hours.
I've thought about this before. We talk about like life on other planets and stuff like that. Something about me, and it's probably biased because I am human. I wonder if the humanoid, because I think we would call Neanderthals and Homo erectus and Homo habilis, I think we would call all of them human as well. Like I think they fall underneath the hominid, like the Vitruvian man. That's like the
the Leonardo da Vinci.
What we're supposed to look like. I wonder if this humanoid form, if we find other higher intelligence out there in the universe, I wonder if there'll be a hominid. If there'll be a human of some kind. I wonder if we are because they say like, well, in the Bible it says we were made in the image of God. I wonder if the universe's like physical manifestation is a human. You know what I mean? When the universe creates cognitive life, if it would be a human, if we were to find other beings out there, if they would look like us. Like, have you all ever seen the movie Prometheus? Like the Alien vs Predator movie?
Yep.
Remember how he's like this blank slate
humanoid.
He's like a humanoid. He's like a blank slate of a humanoid. Oh crap. Hold on, give me a second. We've been filming for so long, my camera's getting hot. I know how to fix this too. Y'all might have to cut this out.
Overheating camera.
And as you can, if you're watching our episode, you can see this absolutely adorable photo of Luke in the back, with maybe holding a camera.
No, it's me as an explorer.
Oh, he's got binoculars. Of course, dude. Yeah. Yes. Perfect.
Meant to be.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, it's weird, right?
Manifest destiny.
if I turn my camera down from 4K to 1080p, I think that stops it from overheating.
Okay.
Anyways, so in the movie Prometheus, when he's that like blank slate of like an all white humanoid thing, when he goes down and plants life on the earth, I wonder if that is just
to plant life on the earth, he actually dies into the earth, doesn't he?
Oh, is that what he does? I haven't seen this.
He drinks something and kind of like
he drinks something and dissolves into the planet, and then life sprouts from him. So it would correlate if the universe is supposed to be humanoid, then it was a humanoid thing that planted the life to this.
That movie.
I like where you're going though.
Good. Yeah,
I agree.
But yeah, man, that's kind of. I wonder if if we found other things out there. I mean, I guess even like little aliens would qualify as humanoid, because they've got 2 legs and 2 arms and a head. But yeah, I wonder if something about us is like intrinsically perfect for what we're supposed to be. I mean, I know that on planet Earth we are, but I wonder about in space, because as far as we know, all the molecules and elements of life are the same. So if there's other life out there that is cognizant like we are, I wonder if there's a connection there. If we were to find life, if it would be other hominids that were out there. They may not look exactly like us, Heck, they would be like cavemen or something. I don't know.
I feel like based on like whatever elements additionally are present on their planet that may not be present here, that they could be hominids and they're just different some way because of the environmental impacts it had on their evolution.
Exactly, right? Like I wonder if we were to come across like some kind of desert planet, right? That barely has any water at all. Like yes, yeah. I just thought about that as you said that. Because, they actually wouldn't look like the what are the people called that live on Arrakis? I can't remember.
Dude, I know. I just was started this. Yeah. Dune. Look it up, Zach.
Yeah. So the people, I forget what the people are called that live there, but they're like the native people, but that's not what they would look like. Their nose, they would look like snakes almost, because they would have like eyelids that cover up their eyes to protect them from the dust. They wouldn't have, they would have like eyebrows. They would have like the what?
Fremen? They're called the Fremen?
Yeah.
The Fremen. Fremen.
They would have like super low eyebrows and like really squinted eyes to protect their eyes from the dust. And they would have like either like downturned noses to protect them from getting dust up in their eyes. But they would look some kind of like weird reptile person that's fit for surviving in the desert. And I would just wonder if we were to come across some other planet, if we'd be like, holy, what? You're a human, but you look different than us because you adapted for different things.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah. That's kind of my thinking.
I like that. Dude, we have to have you on again, man. I would love to do the Bible side by side and just all those other texts, the Book of Enoch, all that stuff, and to talk more, dude. Because like I wanted to talk about Göbekli Tepe a little bit more too, and Tepe Kuru and all those different areas. And dude, there's just so much shit, dude. We could keep talking. We have to have more episodes, and we definitely will.
I know. Yeah, man.
I would love if Luke was up for it. I'd love to have him on, because you're kind of interested in the aliens and all this type of stuff. I'd love to have you on for our Planet 9 discussion. And the
Planet 9 discussion.
Yeah, there's the theory of like there's a 9th planet that apparently has like humanoid people on it, and every so often it comes into our solar system, comes close enough to Earth, and that's where actually humans came from. Is it crossed from that planet to Earth?
Really?
Yeah.
And is this the whole Nibiru thing?
No, it's supposed to sign. It's like Planet 9 technically like Anunnaki, and then there's the
Anunnaki connected to Nibiru.
Yeah. So it would. So it's the idea mostly that like humans are not actually from this planet, and we're the only species that can't like live on this planet in harmony. We have to cultivate and change it to live here. It's because we're not actually from here.
Dude, I wouldn't be surprised.
Dude, I know.
I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I just as an anthropologist, I try to be like real grounded and
in my videos, you probably won't see me entertaining stuff like this, but in a podcast setting, shoot, man.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, dude.
I'm so glad you came on,
Crazy
dude, for real. It would be. Yeah, this is you talked earlier about like destiny and like things in the making. This is legit the episode why I wanted to start doing this podcast. So like for real, man, it means a lot to me that you came on and we had this big ass conversation.
Yeah.
And because we covered a lot of ground, and there's so much more to cover, which is the amazing thing about our planet. And yeah, we have to have you back on. And I don't want to wait that long either. I don't want people to like lose, the Luke magic, man. So
Yeah.
but yeah. Is there anything you want to say in conclusion before we hop off here?
Yeah, well, thank you guys both for having me on and for all the nice compliments you paid me. That means a lot. And yeah, it's really cool just getting to be asked to come on people's shows and just talk about ancient history with them and to have people it's like an honor to just be seen as somebody who's like a harbinger of this kind of topic or somebody who knows something about it, and it means a lot to me that you guys had me on and enjoyed having me on and are like, we're not inviting him back on.
Hell no.
No, you're coming back.
So,
whether you want to or not.
And thank both of you guys for your service. Y'all both did something that I never had the I never took the jump to do it. And
until Trent talks you into going special recon. Yeah.
It's probably too late for me on that, but I will always regret it.
I don't regret it, dude.
I'm 26 now, and I think about it, and I didn't actually fully decide that I was going to go all in on the history stuff until I was 22, 23. And I talked to my wife about it sometimes. I'm like, I could have done it. I could have done it even before I decided I was going to start making videos on this. I could have been out by 22 or 23.
39 is the cutoff. So
39 is the cutoff. Yeah. So
you'd have a hard time keeping up with the 20-year-olds at NDOC if you're doing.
But I bet if you're that much older than everybody, you shoot up the ranks though. That's what I've heard about people. You don't.
No, you come in just like the only thing that might not to like take off too much before we wrap it up is time of service and time of grade, like they still matter, but like the only thing I think that would set you apart is the maturity level. Because if you're the same rank as somebody who's in the 18 to 22 group and you're 30, I had a friend who went through tech school who was 32, and it's just a mental leap there with the. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that may help you because people, you'll have a different work ethic. You'll have a different thought process on things. You'll understand, hierarchy and stuff like that a little bit better. So that kind of will help you in that aspect, but not in the like objective way of like, yep, okay, you're older. Here's E5.
Well, whatever. Yeah. Of course. I just say that because I used to work at a nursing home, and one of the guys that was there, he was in the Air Force. He was like a career guy. Like he stayed in for his whole career. I think he joined up at 28 and he was there until he was 64, 65, something like that. And I told him, I was like, man, you joined when you were 28. How was that? And I was probably 20 when I had this conversation with him. And he was like, oh, it was fine. I kept up with everybody. And I was like, what was it like with the people who were a lot younger than you, the guys who were 6 years younger than you, 22, fresh out of college? And he told me, and I guess maybe that it was just part of the times that he was in, but he's like, yeah, I shot up the ranks way, way past everybody. All
maturity does help you promote
it. And maybe too, like, I don't know what he was, but like enlisted versus officer promotions are different too. Not in a lot of ways, but like I think the way that you get looked at if you have a more mature outlook and you're able to be more responsible.
I think he was enlisted because he was some kind of super high ranking sergeant.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, definitely your maturity level, like Zach is saying, is going to play a factor. Absolutely. Because especially if you've had a job before, they know that you can handle different tasks and, you're not learning. This isn't your first job out of high school. Maybe you were working at Dairy Queen and now you're in the Air Force or something. But anyway,
for sure.
Yeah, dude. Thank you for real for coming on, and for everybody listening, go check out Luke Caverns, Instagram and YouTube, wherever else you were just on Concrete Podcast. You can listen to that when it comes out. And please check us out as well. Give us a like and follow over on social media, and you can subscribe to us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. So, Luke, thank you, man. Thank you so much for coming on, and we'll catch you on the next episode, and everybody else on the next episode.
Sometime soon.
Absolutely, dude. Yes, have a good night. What's going on, Fire fans? I Came With Fire podcast is sponsored by Red Clover Coffee and Sheep's Clothing, LLC. Red Clover Coffee is a veteran-owned company with small batch roasted coffees, and they just happen to donate to some pretty awesome charities. Whether you're into specialty flavored coffees, single source coffees, or having a really cool coffee mug and some badass slaps, Red Clover has you covered. You can order ground, whole bean, or even coffee pods and get it all at 10% off your entire purchase using coupon code CAMEWITHFIRE. Again, that's 10% off your entire purchase using our coupon code CAMEWITHFIRE. I personally love their Blueberry Invasion and African Roast. That Blueberry Invasion hits the spot. Head over and get yourself some awesome coffee and support us by supporting our sponsor. I Came With Fire podcast is also sponsored by Sheep's Clothing, LLC. Sheep's Clothing, LLC is a unifying banner for all violent arts, disciplines, professions, and survivors of violent circumstances. Redefine violence. Both Zach and I being survivors of violent circumstances and LEOs in the military, we are especially excited to be able to offer you 10% off your entire purchase with coupon code FIRE10 at checkout. Whether you're looking for an awesome t-shirt, hats, slaps, flags, or MMA gear, they've got you covered. Me personally, I love my snapback with the leather patch surrounded by God's flannel. If you know, you know. That's coupon code FIRE10, FIRE10 at checkout for 10% off your entire purchase. Thank you all so much for supporting this podcast, and if you should feel compelled, treat yourself by supporting our sponsors as well. They truly make a difference for us. Now let's make a difference for them. See you on the next show.